Okay, we're going to get started with our Selma City Council special meeting. It's October 14th, 2025 at 2 p.m. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. We're in the Selma City Council chambers at 1710 Tucker Street in Selma, California, 93662. The teleconference phone number is 301-715-8592. The webinar ID is 891-6864-5005. When on the phone, if you wish to address the council, during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 to raise your hand, and we will select you from the meeting queue. Press star 6 to unmute and mute yourself. Notice to meeting attendees, members of the audience shall not engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including the utterance of threatening or abusive language or other acts which disturb, disrupt, or impede, or otherwise render the orderly conduct of a city council meeting infeasible. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avalos.
Here.
Councilmember Oseguera.
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo. Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Here.
Mayor Robertson.
Here. Okay, moving on, potential conflicts of interest. Any council member who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter. Agenda changes or deletions to better accommodate members of the public or inconvenience in the order of presentation. Items on the agenda may not be presented or acted on in the order listed. Additions to the agenda may be added only pursuant to California Government Code, Section 54954.2B. City Attorney, do we have any agenda changes or deletions at this time?
Nothing to add or to delete, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move on to oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the city council regarding any item on the regular meeting agenda over which the council has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the city manager for review. Members of the public are asked to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who'd like to say anything at this time? Do we have anybody online or on the phone with a comment, Patrick?
Mayor, I have no one online at this time.
That will bring the matter back to the council and move on to our first item today, which is special presentations. Our first special presentation today is an overview of self-funded health insurance as presented by the Baldwin Group. CHAR Director.
Mayor, members of council, thank you for coming in today for this special meeting. I really appreciate it. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Vincent. She is with our brokers that represent us for health insurance. She's going to be doing about a 30-minute presentation, starting off talking about what self-insurance is. As you know, we went self-insured about 20 months ago. So we're just now starting to really get into the plan, being self-insured and getting some good numbers, but she has a brief presentation for you. And at the end, you'll be able to ask any questions.
Thank you. Welcome.
No, I'm going to be really loud. I'm here today to give you a quick overview of the current self-funded benefits plan with through the city with our company. Go one more, please. Thank you. The Baldwin Group is headquartered in Tampa Bay, Florida. with our West Coast headquarters in Irvine, California, and we were founded in 2011. In 2019, the year of our IPO, we evolved from a local business to a national firm, building a collaborative network of colleagues whose diverse interests generate optimal solutions for more than 3 million clients worldwide. Our over 4,000 colleagues consistently deliver for our clients and have continually ranked the firm a great place to work by the likes of Business Insurance in USA Today. Prior to becoming the Baldwin Group, we were Burnham Benefits, and Burnham Benefits was purchased by the Baldwin Group about 3.5 years ago, shortly after the IPO. And we became the Baldwin Group officially about 1.5 years ago. So Burnham Benefits was the Irvine, California location and was a local company. One of the things on this slide that I just want to point out that we're very proud of is our client retention. While we do have a lot of clients, we retain approximately 95% of those year over year, which is ahead of the industry average by more than 10%. Next slide. With the implementation of a self-funded insurance plan, a health insurance committee was formed in 2024. The committee is represented by members from each bargaining unit, a retiree representative, as well as city staff. The committee meets quarterly with Baldwin Group, who is the city's benefits consultant, to review plan performance, enrollment, and claims activity, as well as provide any carrier updates. The committee will meet multiple times during the third quarter to go over the plan renewal, options, and consider decisions necessary for the next plan year. This could include possible benefit changes, plan updates, carrier reviews, as well as possible premium and contribution updates. During the fourth quarter of each year, the city holds its open enrollment meetings. What exactly is self-funding? All health plans are made up, next slide twice. Sorry about that. All health plans are made up of the same costs. You have claims, you have reserve, you have administration costs, you have pooling charges, and you have margin. However, in a self-funded environment, the claims, reserve, and margin are all variable. They are not fixed costs. In a fully insured type of environment, all of those costs are premiums out the door. So if you never know if you have a great claims year or a bad claims year because your premium is out the door, it's out of the city's account. With the self-funded plan, the monies are retained by the city and only paid out when needed for paid claims. The stop loss premiums and administration, which we call fixed costs, are the only costs going out the door every single month. Next slide, please. Self-insurance is basically just the funding mechanism that provides health benefits to the employees. Stop loss is what we use to minimize the risk of the self-funded plan and to protect the plan against catastrophic financial loss. There are two types of stop loss coverage. You have a specific stop loss, which protects the plan against high claims for any one person, and aggregate stop loss, which protects the plan against the accumulation of claims from an entire group. Next slide, please. Currently, the city's individual stop loss is at $65,000. So for example, if you have a $200,000 claim, the employer is responsible for the first $65,000, and the stop loss carrier will reimburse or pay the remaining $135,000. This is based on a per person individual stop loss. This is what we call the specific. But let's say that you had 100 people that had $64,999 of claims. There's nothing for the stop loss carrier to reimburse. That is where the aggregate stop loss comes into play. So you pay a fixed fee each month for aggregate stop loss, which protects the city against a maximum liability. Once that maximum liability is reached, then the stop loss carrier begins to reimburse funds. Slide, please. One more slide, please. I'm sorry. So just a real quick overview of your self-funded plan cost versus CalPERS premium. So when we quoted on the group and took over the plan in January of 2024, the city had left CalPERS. CalPERS has had significant increases to their medical plans year over year. In 2024, the self-funded fixed plan costs, which are administration and stop loss premiums, was $671,982. Your self-funded claims cost at the end of the year was $1,144,862 for a total plan cost of the self-funded plan of $1,816,844. CalPERS medical plan premiums for the same individuals that were covered under the self-funded plan would have been $2,517,275, which brings a total plan savings to the city for the self-funded plan of $700,431 in 2024. In 2025, we've used actual self-funded plan costs through September and estimating the next 3 months to get us through the end of the year. And we have self-funded plan fixed costs of $662,177. Our current claims cost is estimated to be $1,489,318 for a total self-funded plan cost of $2,151,495. Using the 2025 CalPERS rates and the same enrollment as currently on the self-funded plan, CalPERS medical premiums would have been $2,739,316, which shows your self-funded plan is providing an additional savings in 2025 of $587,821. I mentioned a minute ago about aggregate and specific claims, deductibles, and reimbursements. And currently, due to the claims and our aggregate and stop loss individuals, we are expecting an additional $279,292 in reimbursements to the plan after the end of the plan year, which would increase our total self-funded plan savings to over 800,000, excuse me.
Just a quick question. Does that go back to the city, the reimbursement?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes. So for 2026, we are projecting plan costs based on current enrollment, your current claims. We also include a trend, and trend is going to be basically if you have incurred the same number of claims or same amount of claims that you had this year, what would that look like next year? Because we all know due to inflation, cost of living increase, et cetera, the same $100 this year does not go any further, does not go the same $100 next year, right? So we do include some of that into your projected plan costs. So our 2026 projections for your fixed costs are $633,426. We're projecting claims to be $1,881,649 for a total projected self-funded plan cost of $2,515,075. Again, the CalPERS rates for 2026 using the same enrollment would be $2,999,422. This is showing us projected self-fund plan savings of $484,347. Using the aggregate numbers that we had discussed before, what if worst case scenario? So we have a bad claims year. What is the worst case out-of-pocket scenario? Would there still be a savings for the city? Using the aggregate plan liability, the maximum plan exposure in 2026 is $2,743,563, which would still provide the city a savings of $255,859 over a fully insured equivalent through CalPERS. all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks for your presentation.
Glasses on now so I can see.
Can we get this? Can you have this emailed to
Yes.
each council member? Thank you. Also, what do you do about claims reserves? Because not all the claims, last a day. Sometimes they're diseases, issues, that last a long time.
Correct.
How do you figure those into your rates
So usually
or
the
premiums?
it's going to be based on, so the stop loss carriers provide the premiums. The stop loss carriers review all of your claims. They also get any pre-authorized claims. So if there are things that have been pre-authorized, pended, things that are happening that haven't yet happened, they have a report with the estimated amount of those costs. There is also a case management file. So if you have someone, let's say with a diagnosis of cancer, they're under case management, they have an idea of how long that cancer is going to last, what the estimated claims are going to be. Is there going to be chemotherapy long term? Is that a year, 2 years, et cetera? And all of that information is taken into account when the stop loss carriers provide those rates. From a claims perspective, we use the previous claims, we trend those claims, and we assume some sort of additional claims data to get to our projected claims level. And that is what we use when we say projected claims. But from a fixed cost perspective, it comes from the stop loss carrier, and they're looking at enrollment, they're looking at specific claims information and any diagnoses that are currently on file. Unfortunately, as you said, there's nothing that can protect you from unknown, which is where the aggregate comes into play. So the aggregate will help any of those unknowns that maybe aren't showing this year or showing up yet, but they might in the future. And that's where the aggregate would come in to protect the liability of the city for those extra costs.
And then, is there a true up at the end of the year, a year and a half, 2 years to go back, kind of retrospectively look at the claims development where they actually came in and to reconcile those with the premium? And does the city get money back or have to pay more potentially based on the final outcome of those claims? Or is
No.
that annual premium, that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Yes. So that would be a captive. A captive works similar to that way where they look at retroactive claims and you would have paid a deposit to the captive. And did you use that deposit? And if not, do you get it back or do you need more money? You are not part of a captive. You are 100% self-funded. Your stop loss is solely based on your experience. So that information, the fixed costs are what they are. They're not going to change. The only thing that is reviewed annually is going to be the total paid claims to see if you've met your aggregate reimbursement point, and then if there's any claims that need to be reimbursed from there. That usually happens probably about 3 months after the end of your plan year, simply because those claims are still coming in for the next couple of months for the 2025 plan year.
So we see on our check register, we see the quarterly bills for IRMA and RMA premiums, but we don't see the health insurance. How is the health insurance billed?
The fixed costs are billed on a monthly rate. So you currently have a third-party administrator that is kind of like the gatekeeper. So they get all the enrollment, they get all the bills from each of the different vendors. So your stop loss carrier, your network, Blue Shield network has a fee to use their network. All of those come into the third-party administrator. They then send out a fixed cost invoice on a monthly basis. That invoice is based on current enrollment. That is paid monthly. And then your claims are billed on a weekly file, and it's any claims that have been paid during that week. And that is billed weekly and typically on a Friday and paid on a Tuesday.
So how will I see that in the check register to look for that? How's it gonna appear? the
Mayor,
TPA?
members of council, those are bills that get paid weekly, mainly ACH. So they're not going through, they go through our system in a different way because that's part of why we get good contract rates is because we pay within a couple of days. So they do a sweep account. We have a very specific fund, health insurance fund set up. So that will be coming in the finance director's quarterly review. So you'll get to see all of the expenses incurred to date on those.
Already we're learning something. So from now on, I think, do my council brothers and sister concur with me that we'd like to see ACH payments because they're still coming out of the general fund? Can we add that to the check register as a little line item at the bottom, ACH payments? including the health insurance, and just clearly label it for us so we know? That'd be great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
I do have a question on the healthcare plan. uh, Is there, what is a seating cap? You must have a seating cap on the individuals.
65,000 currently?
Yes. You have don't you have a healthcare city? Is there a seating cap on the medical plan?
On the benefit itself?
Yes.
No.
You don't?
Each employee has a cap, so they would never pay more than currently. There are 4 plan options and each plan has different benefits. So
Uh-huh.
as an employee, let's use one of the plans is an EPO plan. Any employee on that plan would never pay more than $1,500 in claims costs. There is the 65,000 in claims. The cap from the city is the stop loss. But from an employee perspective, each plan has its own calendar year maximum, and some of them are as low as 1,500 and the highest currently is 4,000.
Okay, thank you.
That answer your question? I'm sorry.
You were asking, is there a benefit limit? Is there a benefit limit?
Like a lifetime maximum? By benefit limit? No, there is no benefit limit.
Okay.
It will never stop paying for you.
Anybody else? Anybody from the public with a question? Anybody online or on the phone with a question about the city self-funded health plan?
Mayor, I see no one online at this time.
Thanks for your presentation. Much appreciated.
Time,
We definitely want to see your presentation emailed. So if we could get that, that'd be
no problem.
great.
I believe Margie has it.
Great.
We
Thanks
just
so
loaded
much.
that into the portal for Sarah just today, so I apologize we didn't get it sooner. I do want to point out that we met this morning with the Health Insurance Committee. Next week, we'll be meeting again. This is the third quarter, so we're in the process of working with rates. After our discussions today, they're going back to their units, talking to them about the changes that need to be made. Talked a little bit about reserves, and that's one of the things the city does need to work towards having a reserve. So that the years that we have a little bit higher claims, we can kind of buffer those a little bit and take it out of reserves. So that's one of the goals of the program. So this will, setting the rates will be a recommendation coming from the Health Insurance Committee. So that will be coming to one of your November meetings.
And in the budget, I'm going to go back to the budget now for the current year. Where would we see the allocation for the health insurance premium? I'm familiar with IRMA and RMA, that stuff, but the health insurance, where's that located?
Yes, Mayor. We do have a specific fund, Fund 705 for insurance.
Okay.
So it's in the internal service section.
Got it. Thank you. Moving on to item special presentation 1-2, Central San Joaquin Valley Risk Management Authority will provide an overview of services currently offered to the city.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to introduce when she's one of our the RMA. It's a shortened version of the Central San Joaquin Valley Risk Management Authority. That's what our abbreviation is. And so she has many members of her team today that have all the different specialties and what they provide to us. And so Jeanette will be doing that presentation.
Okay, green light's on. Thank you, Margie. We'd like to thank you for having us today. We brought our whole team with us. Thank you for mentioning that we shortened the name to RMA, and I heard Mayor Robinson say the same, so you already referred to us as that, so that's good to know. Today's presentation is going to provide you some information about the services that we provide. We're going to do an overview of the RMA, the program services, and the breadth of coverage and services and knowledge of our team. And I'm going to introduce the team in just a moment. We'll talk a little bit about joint powers authorities, which is what the RMA is. Go over financial. We understand that your biggest concerns with the RMA are, we do understand that you're considering leaving the RMA. And so we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to speak and give you some knowledge or information. The two areas that we understand are the biggest are the premiums. And so we're focusing today first on the budget. Joe will go over that. And then the Employment Risk Management Authority, we understand, is a concern with the premiums and maybe the services. We've got the executive director from IRMA here with us today to talk to you about that. We do want to open it up for questions at any time while we're presenting. Feel free to interrupt us and ask, or when we're done, you can ask as well. we're happy to pivot our presentation to whatever your needs are today. So I'd just like to introduce, I'm Jeanette Workman. I'm the administrator for the RMA. I've been with the RMA and with Cedric for 40 years. I am actually going to be retiring next year after 40 years of service, and I'm going to be turning it over to my successor, Chrissy Mack, who is also here today. She'll take over as the administrator. Chrissy has many years of service with the RMA and with Cedric as well. Then we've got with us Joe Roy, our finance manager, who will be presenting, Rob Kramer, who is the executive director of IRMA, Tammy Vitale, who is our work comp program manager, Melissa McDonald is our litigation manager, and Adam Lopez, senior risk control services consultant. So we'll all go through our areas of expertise. And again, please feel free to ask any questions. We're going to start off, if you'll go to the next slide, please, just with the mission statement of the RMA. So this lays out the fundamental purpose of the RMA, which is to provide quality, cost-effective risk financing and risk control services. And as we go through our presentation, you'll see that we do meet the mission statement. Just some highlights about the RMA. We were formed in, I'm sorry, next slide, please, 1979. The RMA consists of 53 members currently, and they're all located throughout the central San Joaquin Valley. It's a very homogeneous group. The cities are all close in size. Right now, the bylaws require that a member have less than 75,000 in population to join. We do have a couple cities that Clovis and Tracy and a couple others that are a little bit over that now, and they're grandfathered in. The RMA contracts with Sedgwick, and the team that I introduced today are all Sedgwick employees. But again, we consider ourselves your staff, but they do contract with us for the day-to-day operations. And the RMA provides self-insured and group purchase coverages. And again, we'll go through those. There's multiple benefits. I think when you look at the budget and you look at the number that you see, you think of coverage, but there's so many services that we offer in addition to coverage. And just to throw out an example, I see your police chief here. The RMA covers as part of your premium the Lexipol services for your police manual and the daily training bulletins. That's included in the budget. So that's part of the premium that you're seeing when you're looking at your budget. So that's why we felt it was important to come and do a big overview of everything that's inclusive in your premium that you pay. So when you look at that number, you know what you're getting for what you're paying. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just what a joint powers authority is. If you can go to the next slide. So RMA is a joint powers authority, and joint powers authority are a collaborative arrangement for two or more public entities to come together to do something in common. And back in the 70s and 80s, public agencies faced a rising insurance costs, and some entities could not get insurance. So the legislator allowed or amended the government code to allow for joint powers agencies to be formed. And that's when the RMA formed. And at that time, I think they started with 12 cities. It was the Tulare Kings RMA, and they've grown since then. And we're not insurance, so the language of insurance does not apply to JPAs, just so you know. The next slide just shows kind of depicts kind of what's happening even current day, but back in the 70s and 80s, this is what happened is the market just got so hard that public entities couldn't either afford it or couldn't get it. This shows in 1986, it kind of spiked again and there was another crisis and more JPAs were formed. And currently today, if you want to go to the next slide, there's, well, the pooling industry has been in existence for 45 plus years, and currently there's approximately 85% of the 90,000 plus California local governments are in a risk management JPA. And I'm going to now turn it over to Chrissy to just talk about the major advantages of the joint powers authorities.
Jeanette, next slide. So some of the advantages of being in a risk management JPA is first and foremost, it's member controlled. The members are determining how the organization is going to be governed, what coverages are going to be provided, those types of items. We use actual claims experience of the members to determine rates. We're not just relying on industry data. We tailor the risk control services to meet the member needs to try and avoid losses. Claims management services are also very tailored to meet the city's needs. We retain the investment income, which means we can collect less upfront because we're earning money on investments. So that's a great advantage to the cities. We typically have lower operating expense ratios than a commercial insurance company does. And we do not have to charge the California Insurance Guarantee Association assessment. And that is a charge in case an insurance company becomes insolvent, then claims can still be paid. We continue paying claims. We have mechanisms in place so that claims and expenses can still be paid.
Just a quick question, Chrissy. So there's no backup of the guarantee fund for this mechanism because, as you said, it's not insurance.
Right, it's not commercial
If
insurance.
the JPA would go insolvent, there'd be no, at least public response to that to bail out each policyholder up to what, 500,000 or something per claim. There'd be nothing there.
The cities would ultimately be responsible to
Pay the debts.
pay the debts.
Got it.
Next slide. And to be fair, we always like to point out some disadvantages of JPAs. And the first is just what we were mentioning, ultimate cost is not guaranteed. At the beginning of each program year, we collect from the members the amount we anticipate we will need to pay for all of the expenses, including claims expenses. And we do so at a very high confidence level, and Joe will talk about that. But if we don't collect enough, we do have to assess the members. We are not just an insurance company. You're not just writing a check. It does require active participation. This can be a good thing, but it also can be a drain on resources because it does require the cities to have active participation in the organization. And we do have a governing board that has a responsibility to look out for the best needs of everybody as a whole, not just their entity, their city. We are accredited through an association known as the California Association of Joint Powers Authorities. It's a statewide organization of joint powers authorities. And because we're not regulated by the state like an insurance company would be, we go through an accreditation process. And this is an independent organization from ours, and they assign an independent consultant that reviews our entire organization to make sure that we are adhering to industry best practices. They look at everything in great detail, how we're operating, how we're governing, the finances, and making sure that everything is adhering to the industry standards. And the CSJV RMA is accredited with excellence, which is the highest designation you can receive. And I think at this point, if you go to the next slide, yeah. So now I will turn it over to Joe Roy to discuss the budget, unless you have any other questions.
Everyone, I'm the finance manager for the RMA. So any finance questions, direct them my way. Next slide, please. All right, so contributions, they can be broken up into different programs offered by the RMA. The largest programs are the workers' comp program and the liability program. I'm going to talk specifically about those ones, those are the biggest components of the annual contribution, and talk about each component of those budgets: the pool layer funding, excess insurance costs, claim servicing costs, and indirect expenses. Next slide, please. All right, so pool layer funding. So this is the portion of risk that is held by the member and the pool as a whole. This differs between the liability and workers' comp program. For liability, it's up to $1 million. Workers' comp is up to 500,000. And so it's the biggest cost in the budget. We consult with an actuary who determines what is the rate based on, we usually use payroll as sort of the exposure base for claims. This is particularly true for workers' comp. It's a little different for liability. I'll go into more of that later on. And there's a risk margin for uncertainty, and we call that the confidence level. And the idea is that you can estimate what your expected level of claims is, But then if you put more money into the fund, then you have a greater chance of covering claims for sort of unexpected cases. And we fund at the 85% confidence level for both these programs. And that means, you know, out of 100 years of funding, 15 of them are likely to be sort of out of budget based on estimates at that point in time. And then funding is discounted for investment income. We use a 2% discount rate. So that means that you put money into the fund today, we invest that in various investments, and that generates investment income. And so even though a claim might be $100 down the road, if you put 95 in today, that will accrue interest, and then we'll have that $100 down the road. So we only need to put in $95 today. Next slide, please. All right, so pool layer funding, how is it calculated? Workers' compensation, we use payroll. The idea being that the more expensive an employee is, the more in workers' comp benefits they might receive. And general liability, we use a different sort of allocation. We still use payroll, but it's only 50% of how we're going to assess the costs. Another factor is population, which we weight 25%, and then employee census, another 25%. So we get the actuarial report for workers' comp. It's a rate per $100 of payroll. Multiply that by your payroll amount. That gets you your workers' comp contribution. General liability, we get sort of the sum total for the pool, what it'll be, and then we apply that composite distribution factor, figure out what it is for each member, and sort of take that as a percentage of the whole and apply it to the liability premium. We also use an experience modification factor, which is adjusted for credibility, and an off-balancing factor. I'll explain those in the next slides. All right, the experience modification factor, also called the X mod. The idea is that some cities bring more risk into the pool, and the pool has an average X mod of 1.0. So if you are less risky than the other cities, your X mod is below 1. And if you're more risky, it's above 1. And so we multiply the rate times that X mod times your payroll in order to determine what your contribution will be to the pool. And I believe the next slide talks about the calculation of X mod. Yeah, so we look at the loss ratio. So that looks at your 5-year average losses of first we look at the whole pool's 5-year losses, and then the pool's whole 5 years of payroll. That gets us a value. And then we calculate each city's loss ratio, which is the same calculation, but just for that city. And then that gives us the X mod calculation, which again is either above 1 or below 1, or if you exactly match the pool average, it's exactly 1.0.
Incurred or paid?
It's paid, sorry.
Paid, okay. That benefits the city a little more, actually.
And do you have those reports for the city of Selma?
Yeah, we'll go into that in a second. Oh yeah, sorry, it's totally incurred, but
Usually retros use incurred.
my apologies.
Okay.
Slide, please. We also use a credibility factor, the idea being that smaller cities might have less consistent loss history than bigger cities. And so the smaller your city is, the more impactful that credibility factor ends up being. And so you can see the workers' comp program without the credibility factor has an X mod of 1.6. With it, it's only 1.058. Same thing with the liability program. It adjusts the X mod for smaller cities, sort of squeezes everybody a little bit closer to 1. Next slide, please. And then there's an off-balancing factor. And that is because sometimes when you apply these X mod factor, whether due to rounding or whether due to just some cities have better loss history than mix doesn't quite equal 100%. So what you do is you multiply every city by the same off-balancing factor to get you back to your actuarially determined liabilities for the workers' comp or the liability program. And so workers' comp this year, 25-26, bumped everybody up by essentially 2%. and liability, it went down by a percentage point. This is again, just for the pool layer funding. Next slide, please. Excess insurance costs, they're provided by two other JPAs, who in turn also contract with excess insurers in the private markets. We use Karma for general liability and Locks for workers' compensation, and they're allocated to each member based on their exposure base. So workers' comp, it's just by payroll, and liability is the composite distribution factor, which we'll go into a little more detail about those in a few minutes. Other costs, these are claim servicing and also indirect costs, such as the cost of managing the pool. Those are allocated based on the exposure base. And then generally, we for these two programs, we try and determine what sort of the expected amount of these indirect costs that will be incurred for each of these programs. And we use a factor trying to get it to match our actual expenses that we allocate as they come in to these programs. And we use 2.5% for workers' comp and 3% of the total premium for liability. Next slide. All right, next we're going to go into sort of a deep dive into the Selma's rates, their XMOD, your exposure base, and kind of sum it all up and what it meant for rates for the current year. Next slide. The base rates for the RMA as a whole. And you can see this is a comparison of the current year versus the previous year, and it went up for both the workers' comp program and the liability program.
We'll be getting this emailed to us as well, right? Like the
Certainly.
previous
I think
one.
you guys have a copy, but
We don't have it here, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get one. Thank you.
And so this is the base rate based on the budgeted numbers that we then, and in turn, send contribution bills to you all.
Yes.
And so I just want you to pay attention to the pool layer for workers' comp went up by about 20 cents per $100 of payroll. And then as a whole, the liability program went up by about 50 cents for everything combined. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the base rate compared to the budget rate used for the latest billing cycle. And you'll see for workers' comp, it's really the pool layer which has sort of deviated from the norm for the RMA. And we'll talk about the details of that in future slides. We'll show you the numbers in future slides, but the short answer is it's the exposure base payroll went up by about 25% and your XMOD was greater than 1. So that means that your pool layer contributions are going to, mostly it's the XMOD for this slide, is going to deviate from the norm because of that difference from the pool as a 1.0 XMOD normal.
Just so everybody gets what you're saying.
Yeah.
We're talking about Selma versus the rest of the members. On the whole, Selma's rates have gone up because of the payroll increases and because of the experience modification, which reflects increased claims activity.
That's
or
right.
Increased claims amounts.
Yes.
Okay.
And then liability actually went down compared to the pool as a whole, but remember that 50 cents increase from the prior slide. So we're seeing that everybody's costs are going up. So it'll turn out that Selma's costs also went up, but it's sort of within line with the pool as a whole. So next slide, please. And this is just a comparison from year to year, the prior year versus the current year in terms of what your rate was per $100 of payroll. You can see that workers' comp went up by 6 cents in total, but because that 14 cents in the pool layer, and the pool layer being a large component of costs, your overall rate went up year to year. Same thing with the liability program. The pool layer rate and the excess insurance rate went up for Selma. And so you saw increased costs. Next slide, please. All right, so this is just showing you sort of where you are in terms of your XMOD versus the pool as a whole. And there are 53 members in the RMA. And so don't really want to rank high on this chart. Unfortunately, for workers' comp, you were in third place in terms of your X mod last year. You're in fourth place, so some improvement. And we don't see a lot of year-to-year changes in workers' comp. It tends to be consistent in sort of the claims that you're getting. And you can see your X mod for this year is 1.058,
Out of how many cities again?
53.
We have the fourth highest mod of 53 cities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is the liability program X mod rankings. You're doing better, but you're still 16th out of 53 cities. You can see compared to last year, you were 33, so past the halfway point. You see some more wild swings in terms of X mod rankings for liability because there's less consistency in the number of claims, but higher severity in the claims that do come in. Next slide. All right, so this is like the sort of the big money maker for workers' comp. It's your payroll. This is the budgeted year. We use a calendar year payroll for the budget calculation because we issue the budget in June. So we have a year's worth of data on a calendar year basis at that point in time. It's sort of too close to the wire to use the fiscal year for the budget. And you can see that your calendar year payroll went up 25% from the 2023 2024. So it's calendar year. So this is for the 2025-26 budget, but uses the previous calendar year payroll. Same thing for the previous year. All right, next slide, please. This is the exposure base for liability. Again, it's 50% payroll, 25% population, and 25% employee census. And you'll see, you stayed relatively flat. In fact, the top, I think it was about 20 or so cities stayed relatively consistent in their rankings of using this factor to sort of determine what their share of the liability costs would be. And you can see that stayed the same, but again, the rates for liability went up. So you're going to pay more on a year-over-year basis. Next slide, please. Okay, this is sort of the conclusion. At the bottom half of the slide, you have the summary of your contributions for the 25-26 year. You'll see that workers' comp and liability both went up. Workers' comp went up because the base rate and the actual rate being the budget rate, went up because of your, in the pool layer, due to your X mod, and also your exposure base went up. Calendar year payroll going up 25%.
A
Liability.
quick question.
Yeah.
What constitutes the base rate? Is that per claims, per?
That's if we take the RMA as a whole and
Okay.
take what the cost for every member was for that year and divide it by the payroll of every member combined.
Okay, so payroll cost.
And this is largely actuarially determined, especially for the pool layer rate of funding. And then as we step into the excess layers, it tends to be more influenced by sort of the insurance market, which is in turn, calculated by their own actuaries. And it's just the amount that people are paying in claims or the frequency of those claims is going up. So, and also inflationary pressures, the cost of healthcare, the cost of rebuilding a building in the property program, or just what people are being awarded in trials for liability issues. And yeah, again, workers' comp, the payroll, you went up 25%. So you saw about 25% increase in costs. And then liability program, you stayed about the same relative to the other members of the pool, but as the pool as a whole, costs went up for liability. So that's why we're seeing higher contribution amounts for the liability program.
That we're not, that's the general liability, slips and falls, bodily injury, accidents,
Dangerous
things,
conditions, yeah, that kind of
stuff like
thing.
that.
Yeah.
Bodily, but it's not IRMA, which is the harassment, humiliation, the employment practices, wrongful term, just so people keep that in mind. If you look at the IRMA line item for that stuff, that type of liability insurance, that went from 107,000 last year. Contribution being synonymous with premium, how much city paid?
Yeah.
So 24-25 premium for the sexual harassment, wrongful term, employment-related discrimination, employee claims.
Yeah.
Went from 107 to 148 for this year, which isn't done yet. So that 148,823, that's still ongoing, right? The 2025, 2026
Yeah,
contribution.
that's for the whole year worth of,
That's what we paid up front as the city
I believe so.
for the 25, 26 policy year. Okay.
And Rob will talk more about Irma in a few
Okay,
minutes.
got it.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's sort of this year. If you go to the next slide, please. We don't look at just one year. We do have a retrospective adjustment process. And so the idea with this, in short, is that we're not really here to make money. We're here to fairly allocate the costs amongst the pool members and allocate the specific costs to certain members that they incur to them. And so what we do is we collect money year one. We pay claims year 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the end of year 5, we do an analysis, and we're trying to see what sort of a fair allocation among the members for both their individual costs and also the pool costs. And either you end up with either positive or negative equity at that point, and that sort of money available for the members after that point. So I'll talk more about that in a second. Next slide, please. Like I said, it's 5 years after the end of a program year. We do this calculation. I'll show you the complicated formula in a second that kind of does this, but it's mostly just money into the pool versus money coming out. It's what you contributed plus interest versus the claim costs, the cost of the excess insurance, all that. And it also includes estimates provided by the actuaries on our reserved amounts, including incurred but not reported reserves, which is sort of claims that have happened, but we haven't been notified of them yet. And so they'll incur costs down the road based on these estimates. Next slide, please. This is the formula for it. You can see the positives are the deposit premium and interest earned by the pool. And we allocate interest for that we got in a given year among the previous 5 years of the program. The idea is like the older dollars aren't really generating interest. And then we subtract out losses under the retained limit of each member. And the retained limit is sort of like the member deductible. I think it's $50,000 for both the liability and the workers' comp program. And so that means that a claim comes in, it costs $100,000. Selma is going to pay that first $50,000 through this formula on its own. And then once the claim gets above that $50,000, it's part of sort of the pool's expenses. And so any member of the pool that has that $50,000 SIR or deductible will share in the costs as a pool, and the more costs incurred in those layers, the more costs allocated to you. There is the excess insurance costs as well that's allocated. And one difference between this and the budget is the budget looks at calendar year payroll. This looks at each fiscal year of payroll and sort of identifies what is the thing, sort of like a more true exposure base for a given period. What is the allocation of those costs? There's also an aggregate stop loss, the idea being that we're not going to overly punish a given member for the losses calculated by this formula. And so it's twice your contribution for the year is the most you're going to have to pay. Then we allocate incurred but not reported expense, which is determined by the actuaries, the administrative costs for a year, and then also claims adjusting costs for that year or in those claims. So that gives us your member equity. And if it's a positive number, that's sort of money in the bank. If it's a negative money number, it's going to be likely returned to you in the form of an assessment in a future year. Next slide, please.
In terms of the payroll, how do you handle overtime? Do you multiply that by 2/3 like the general industry, or is this a specialty way that you handle overtime payroll? Because it's not really more risk
Right.
that you're
yeah, I
that you're
think we
seeing. You just take it in as straight overtime and because, I know in our ambulance service, that's just the way it is, that's part of the industry to incur a lot of overtime. It doesn't necessarily imply more risk, but that all goes in.
Yeah, if it's part
all
of the
payroll.
DE9
Okay.
form, we use that number. Yeah.
And vacation pay and all that stuff, anything deferred comp, all that goes in as payroll as well. Okay. I guess, but they're making double or, 2/3, they're making time and a half. They're making a lot more than they would normally. So I could see their extra hours of work are more risk, but you're already charging for that, those extra hours of risk. Would it be that much more? I mean, I'm just relating the way they do it in the comp industry. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Almost like a philosophical question is like, what metric should we use?
Yeah, they're
Compare
handled
kind
just
of-
handled differently. But I mean, it's material because the city incurs a lot of payroll, a lot of overtime, and that's how, that's your basis for figuring your premium. So it's an important question to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can see this retrospective adjustment, this is as of last year. We're still working on the allocations for this year for both programs, but this is sort of the how well Selma's doing compared to what you contributed initially. So this is the aggregate of everything, the whole history of Selma in the pool up until the year 2018-19. So looking pretty good there. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the projected years, which we don't bill or return funds for, not looking so great, but a lot of this is actuarially determined. And so it may turn out that it's not as significant of a deficit for these years as they come due. And you can see there's sort of a trend where 2019-20 is less than the years kind of closer to the current day. And so we tend to see that the amount estimated by the actuaries overshoots it by a little bit. And a part of that is because the initial contribution is at the 85% confidence level, but the retrospective is done at the 90% confidence level. So that amount is always going to be a little bit more, holding everything else constant, but it does depend on sort of loss history. And we have kind of seen an increase in liability costs over time, and less of a trend upwards with workers' comp, but kind of like a creeping up a little bit. So that amount of money in the last slide is sort of can be used as a credit for these years as they come due if they're in a negative balance. Next slide, please. Okay, so talked about the budget this year. We talked about the retro, which looks 5 years in the past. And the 10-year deposit history kind of marries the two. What it does is it says, let's look at where your actual contribution was for a given year based on how everything resulted from the retrospective adjustment. So if you paid $100 10 years ago, and then your retrospective adjustment for that year 10 years ago is positive, your rate of insurance for that year is actually less. So this goes into that detail. Next slide, please. And it does so using a rate per $100 of payroll using the actual fiscal year payroll. And this is a way to sort of benchmark your performance in the RMA against other cities, as well as if you're going to think about exploring other insurance options, I think this is sort of like what you'd want to use in terms of a metric. Next slide, please. This is the workers' comp program. Again, this data is of last year because we're still allocating the retrospective adjustment for this year. And you can see it's kind of bounced up and down a little bit, but it's about $6 and change for each of those years. So that's sort of the takeaway from this is that's sort of like the true cost of the workers' comp program. Next slide, please. And then this is sort of like more of the true cost of the liability program, because there's sort of that smoothing effect of the retrospective adjustment. And it's been again, you can see the liability has been more of an upward trend relative to workers' comp. And I will note that in the past few years, you can see it kind of jumps from between, 16, 17 is a bit of an outlier, about 365. But between like 2 and 3, and then the RMA as a pool determined that it would be good to take on a higher level of coverage a few years ago. And that sort of explains the jump from 3 to 4 that we saw in the past few years. We went from $30 million for any given occurrence to $35 million. Next slide, please. Yeah.
Go back to that slide.
So the city, unlike the health insurance, we heard from the health insurance agent, there is a lot, there is a limit of liability, and that's $35 million for any one claim. Is that correct for the city?
That's right. Oh, my apologies.
34.5. Okay. That's including defense costs. That's including the whole 9 yards. Okay. Oh, okay.
And it's occurrence-based, right? So it'll be like you have multiple claims for one event, but the whole event is covered up to that limit. Next slide, please. All right, so takeaways. Sort of a rehash of this year's contributions. Again, the base rate went up, the actual rate went up, or budgeted rate, and your exposure base went up for workers' comp. That led to higher rates for that program. Liability program, again, the base rate went up. Again, it was about 50 cents, pretty significant. Your actual rate went up a little bit, and your exposure base stayed about the same. It's more expensive for the pool as a whole, so you're going to contribute more to that additional cost for everyone. The retrospective adjustment, it's a true up of the contributions and interest versus the member and the pool costs. And then the 10-year deposit history is a comparison of compared to the sort of the current year rate amount in the budget versus the 10-year deposit history. It's closer to what the actual costs are going to be. There's difference in what rates are using what type of payroll, calendar year versus fiscal year. And the 10-year will also incorporate the retrospective adjustment results. Any questions from me? And that's my email, joe.roy@sedgwick.com. Feel free to reach out with any questions.
A lot of information.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. Did anybody have any questions before we take a well-earned 5-minute break from all this material that we've received today? Anybody online or on the phone with a question about our insurance rates?
Mayor, I have no one online at this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Joy. Appreciate it. It's very, very informative.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we'll take a 5-minute break. All right. Next up.
All right, we're going to change gears here a little bit. I'm not going to give you that level of detail. But thankfully, most organizations, the risk organizations operate similarly. So those same principles apply to IRMA, the Employment Risk Management Authority. My name is Rob Kramer. I'm the executive director for that organization. I've been running risk sharing organizations for 35 years, many different ones similar to the ones you're hearing about today. I was thinking on my way down here, if I was a city council person, what would be important to me? I think there are a couple things. One is the coverages. Are they broad enough to cover all the different types of things that the city can get sued for? It's a crazy world out there. People can sue for pretty much anything. We're very litigious. And sometimes you can get sued for things that even when you didn't do something wrong. So I'm happy to say you have very broad coverage. The second one, Jeanette and Chrissy talked about, were the services. There's a ton of risk management services, trainings, grant funds. I'm going to talk about a couple of those things. What are the value of those services to us? How would we replace those if we were going to do something else? And then the overall cost. When you add all those together, is it a fair and reasonable cost for what you could get out there otherwise? So we're going to talk a little bit about those things as we get into IRMA. IRMA only covers employment practices exposure. Talking about sexual harassment, discrimination, wrongful termination, retaliation, those types of employment towards things that you can get sued for. Oh, it just keeps going. Oh, it just keeps going. Yeah, there's thousands of them.
Do we need to call for another break?
Yeah. So I'll start. I just keep going. I kind of know what's coming up. So IRMA was formed almost 20 years ago. And the thought back then was, listen, we need to do a better job with the employment practices exposure. Many groups were handling that through their liability programs, but everybody felt that we need to have a more consistent approach to how we handle these claims from a training perspective in particular. How do we manage and reduce those costs? And how do we manage the claims when we do get them? Because you are still going to get claims. Again, sometimes you might not even do anything wrong and you still get a claim. So you still have to manage that process. So the whole idea was to create a separate one that just focused on that. It focuses on the loss prevention, focuses on the management of claims, and it focuses on doing that cost effectively. IRMA is made up of multiple underlying risk sharing groups. You'll see Central San Joaquin Valley is the second one down there. They're one of 12. And they're all a couple of individual members as well. You can go to the next slide there. It's governed again by the members. It's owned by the members. It's run by us, but it's governed and owned by you. Your board members are from the Central San Joaquin Valley. So you have Naomi from Delano and Wendy from Madera. They sit on the IRMA board of directors. So you can talk to them if you have things you think that should change with respect to IRMA. They can bring those things forward to the board or the executive committee. There are 238 members across the state of California, public entities. Most of them are cities like yourself. There are some special districts that are in there as well, transit districts, mosquito and vector control districts. And it's a pretty heavy line of coverage. There are a lot of claims in California for employment practices type things. So we're very busy, 800 claims, as you can see over the last 10 years. We have an open number of claims now of 140, I think, which is pretty significant. Ed? So the one thing about IRMA is it's very fiscally sound. This slide here basically shows the net position of the organization. So you were talking about if you don't collect enough money, you can potentially be assessed. Well, this organization has $19 million in equity. So it's unlikely that you're going to be assessed. What happens more often than not is we return dividends to the members. There's no profit at all. It's all your money. You own it. So over the last 10 years, 9 out of those 10 years, IRMA has returned money. So if you're going to go out and take a look at the market, make sure you're looking at not only what did we pay in and what are the services value, but what did we get back by way of dividends. And IRMA has routinely returned dividends to the members. Next slide. And then the other thing about IRMA is the stability of the rates. So unlike what's happened in the property market recently and in the general liability market, IRMA's rates have been really quite steady. I think we've done a great job in controlling that exposure over the years. And so you can see we're at 40 cents per $100 of payroll, whereas in 14-15, we're at 37 cents. So it's really been very stable and very successful in that regard. Okay, programs and services. Next slide. So the big thing about IRMA is how do we reduce these things up front? There's a tremendous amount of training that's offered through IRMA. Some of it is mandated training that all of your employees need to have, even yourselves as council people have some training that you have to go through for the state of California. So AB 1825, 1234 training that you have to go through. All that stuff is offered through IRMA. You have the opportunity to go to live trainings. You can have a live trainer in your city once per year. You can do online training. You can do virtual training. All the different types of mandated trainings are available through IRMA as part of your contribution. Additionally, reporting of claims is very important. There's case law that says you have to have multiple avenues of reporting. So most claims get reported to HR. They get reported to the direct supervisor. Every once in a while, somebody might feel like they're blocked and they can't report that way. So there's an 1-800 number where employees can report an anonymous claim, and it gets transcribed and sent back to someone appropriate at your city. So you can make sure you get those things. The big thing in employment practices is you need to catch these things up front. You need to investigate them up front to try to resolve them before we get a complaint and start paying a lot of money. So that's the gist of it. There's also an attorney hotline as part of your resources. So I don't know if you're familiar with who does the work in this area. Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore is a big firm. Jackson Lewis, they're the two main firms for IRMA. Your city has the ability to call an attorney hotline and get a free hour every month worth of advice. If you're going through the process of potentially laying somebody off, going through discipline, anything like that, you can call them and make sure, hey, have we thought about everything here? We crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's, and they'll give you free advice as part of your contribution before you make those decisions, right? Try to reduce that exposure. So that's part of it. There are grant funds available. So you have $2,500 a year to spend on anything employment practices related. You can send people to the CalPELRA conference. You can get additional training. You can review your policies. On top of those grant funds, you just apply, send us the receipts, you get $2,500 back. On top of that, we just went through a process of reviewing every member who participated, their employment policies. You sent to us your 10 most critical policies. Liebert Cassidy reviewed those policies, let you know if they're in the right spot. And if they weren't, then you have these grant funds that you can update your policies. So all these things, we're trying to reduce the exposure up front. So hopefully that gives you a good gist. We also have some additional elected officials training we just started. Some of you may have gone, we had a couple down in this area to the elected officials training. We're also doing some leadership training next year to help create the newest leaders. I keep hitting this. Newest leaders in your organization. That'll start in February, and everybody will have access to that. So there's lots of different things. And then the litigation management side. So there are times when you're still going to get claims, right? The people that manage those claims for IRMA are our litigation manager, somebody that has been previously an employment practices attorney, worked for Liebert Cassidy. She's our lead. So she's got tremendous experience in anything that comes in. Various claims people and another litigation management person that helps there. So they manage those 140 claims that we have. It's very important to get to these things early. So anything that's reported, sometimes those can be investigated internally, right? Something can be reported, can be investigated by HR. Sometimes with FEHA in California, the Employment and Housing Act, you have to have impartial, prompt, and thorough investigations. So sometimes it requires an outside investigator. And so we work with the member to talk through who might be appropriate for that, who should be assigned to handle a case if it gets to a complaint stage, all those different types of things. Right, so here's, again, that sort of litigation funnel. The litigation management and claims teams works with you if you get something that comes in. They talk about what should take place. Does there need to be an outside investigation? Can it be handled internally? If it gets to that complaint stage, who would we like to use? There's a panel that uses Liebert, Cassidy, Jackson Lewis, and 8 other firms. There's a very limited panel that all understand the IRMA way to do things, all understand how these claims should be handled. And we talk with you about where should this go if there's a lawsuit. So it's intended to be very collaborative, but there are best practices that we expect everyone to follow, right? Just think about it from a risk sharing perspective. If you're sharing risk with the city of Reedley or city of Madera, they're going to pay their deductible. And then above that, you're going to share on the risk of the cost of those claims. So you want to make sure they're following best practices. It's the same thing in the opposite. All the members want to make sure you're doing that as well.
If you need a water, there's one right.
Slides though, so I'm ready for questions. Yeah. That's all I had for you.
Great. Thanks for the presentation. So, is there a sublimit for the EPA employment practices claims for the city as opposed to the $34.5 million occurrence limit?
So you have your deductible, $50,000, and then there's coverage up to $1 million through IRMA, and then 2 more million that you purchase to get to 3 million. So employment practices has $3 million worth of total coverage.
Got it. So there's a $3 million limit.
Correct.
And could the city come back and potentially buy more, or is that the coverage limit that IRMA is recommending for the city to have at this time?
That's what we have through IRMA. I mean, so you could go to a broker and get excess coverage. We have not had a claim go above 3 million in 20 years. So while they are expensive to defend, and also if you lose a claim at court, you're responsible for the attorney's fees on the other side because of the nature of these claims. We have not had claim go above that.
And then in terms of the claims intake process, you mentioned that someone can anonymously report a claim to the 800 number. How often does that happen?
Rarely.
Rarely?
Rarely, yeah. I'd say, probably 5% of them maybe are reported that way or less. And then all it is it's transcribed and sent to somebody who's not mentioned in the claim at the city so that they can go through the normal process. That's all it is.
Got it. And then there's, let's say there's a actual claim that comes into the city, HR department. Do you get involved with the city in terms of the, distribution of that claim information? Are there best practices that you recommend for who can see the loss runs, who can see what's going on with that claim, and who is privy to the details of that claim?
Yeah, so IRMA's mantra is early reporting, right? It's your obligation to report to us within 30 days of receipt of something in writing, or even something that's oral that's memorialized in writing. Your job is to get that to us within 30 days. And then it's normal protections on claims. So we wouldn't be sharing that with anybody that you don't want us to share it with, but certainly our litigation management team, all the things involved.
You means city, the
Yes.
city attorney, the city council.
If the city attorney brings it to the city council. I mean, we wouldn't do that
The HR director.
unless they're conflicted out in some way. Right.
Okay. And then how often are claims reviews conducted from what you've seen within cities of claims of this sensitive employment nature?
Are you talking about claims reviews with councils or just review internally?
With councils?
Oh, not very often. It just really depends on the nature of the claim. So if you've got something that you need to talk about in closed session, most of the time that flows through your city attorney. If there's a need to have the IRMA litigation manager involved, that can be arranged, but most of the time that's not something that we would do directly with you. Usually it flows through your city attorney.
Okay. City attorney, any questions for this? With Irma? Okay. Any other questions for these types of liability claims?
No, I thank you for coming and educating us on these claims real quick and your staff. We learned some questions. Thank you. This is the enlightenment in life lesson. On these, back up on these claims, when they're submitted, now, what is a time frame? What is on your behalf? What is a time frame to act on them or evaluate them? If they're liable or not situations, who determines that in your staff?
Well, there's a lot of development that takes place over time on these claims. So it's really hard to put a value on a claim up front because you haven't had any sort of discussions or investigation or anything. So the investigation is the first thing. Reporting these things within 30 days is critical to get that investigation done, whether it's an internal investigation or an outside investigation. That's sort of the first thing. Somebody saying, all right, is there any merit to this? Is it talking to all the parties that are named or involved? You know, what's this thing about?
Okay.
But after that, it's all based on whether there's a complaint filed, and there's a whole process of depositions and all these different things where you might learn things about the claim that could change your opinion of the value of the claim. So you don't typically put significant reserves on claims up front until things evolve.
Okay.
Okay, I have a quick question. So in that case, if there is a case that gets reported, is there a specific individual that is assigned to the city of Selma, or do you guys just use who's available?
So everything goes to our litigation management team. So
Okay.
that first time you report it, our litigation manager will review what it's about, right? And then they typically reach out and have a conversation with whoever at the city is the main contact and talk about whether there needs to be an outside investigation, whether it can be an internal investigation. And if it gets to a point where there is a complaint filed, who should we work with? Sometimes you assign counsel early, right? To make sure that you think it's just a touchy one, right? You want to make sure that there's counsel involved. So you would have that conversation with the litigation manager. Well, who you're comfortable with. Here's the 10 people on our panel. Who is, if you had any of these in the past, anyone you're comfortable with, who should we send this to? So it's supposed to be a collaborative thing where we're working together on that.
How often do you actually close these claims?
Oh, we try to close them as soon as we can, but yeah, I mean, it just depends on the claim, right? You know, sometimes they have a life of their own, and you get into start doing investigations, and there's other things that arise that lead to other things. It's a mess out there. I mean, but you have to follow the process for FIHA, right? They have to be investigated prompt and thoroughly and impartially. So I know it's a hassle, but getting those investigations done is critical.
So sometimes these claims, just having looked at taking a peek at the loss runs, some of these claims assert items that are clearly untrue. And so the folks who are making the claims that are untrue and unproven, to me, that's libelous. Is there the opportunity for someone who's accused of those claims to in turn take legal action against those people who make those claims for libel, for damaging
Very-
to one's reputation?
Very difficult. I know how maddening it is. And quite honestly, it's unlike even some of the other areas like general liability where you can investigate something. And if you think you're not at fault, it's like this, we're taking this to trial because of that whole issue with if we get even $1 against us, we have to pay not only our defense costs, but their attorney's fees. So there's sometimes more of a business rationale in some of these cases and employment practices, unfortunately. We try to, straight true and protect the members and stick with if they didn't do anything wrong. But there's sometimes when that just doesn't happen in employment practices because of the nature of those costs.
And at those times, you will give the cities the option whether to roll on their own with that claim?
That it has been done. And most of the time cities don't want to do that, but that has been done. Like, hey, Irma really recommends this be settled for this amount. We realize you don't think you did anything wrong. Yes, that has been done before where the city can take that on, but not often.
Got it. So if someone wanted to respond to those claims and the wording in those claims, they would just have to sue that person in court, right? So that's why your claims sit out there on those loss runs for a long time, because you don't really want them to go anywhere if if they are meritless. Like you say, $1 and you have to pay the defense costs for the other side. The
Yeah.
plaintiff costs.
I would
plaintiff
say we
attorney
try to
costs.
resolve these things as quickly as possible. And sometimes it ends up being a discussion between parties about, misperception of whatever. It depends what it's about. But yeah, if somebody is claiming wrongful termination and they've left because they've been harassed and they're clearly going to get an attorney, it's got to follow its own process, right? It just goes whatever process the plaintiff's attorney is, taking deposition. You have to go through the whole thing.
And the reason I bring it up is because these reserves are sitting out there and they are, incurred losses that are charged against us for the true up. And so we have to pay the experience modification for that, for those claims. So it's a material question. We want those claims closed
Yeah.
and closed as soon as possible, and those, those claims zapped out, those reserves if they're not paid.
Yeah, no, we definitely try to do that. Yeah. Up to whatever's going on with that claim, right? Whether you can do it or not.
And my last question, again, claims reviews. How often is IRMA and RMA doing the claims reviews with the city to review open claims to see where, what's the disposition and how quickly are those going to be settled? Because again, it affects our city's premium.
Yeah, I would say, with 240 members, it's kind of on a case by case basis. Some members don't have any claims currently open, some may have some. And so you're sort of communicating back and forth. If it's one that's being litigated, everybody's seeing the reports from counsel. Your city attorney or whoever's involved is seeing the reports from counsel at the same time. Our litigation management team is. So we're communicating in that way. We don't have, there might be a city that has a whole bunch of stuff going on where we might have a more formalized, let's check in on your 5 claims type thing. But for the most part, it's like on a case by case basis, depending on what's going on with those claims.
So is that something we could request
Sure.
with IRMA and with RMA to have claims reviews to go through each
The job
claim
is
with
to
an
serve the
adjuster?
members. So,
Okay.
yeah, if you've got something going on, you want to talk to the litigation management team about what's going on with your particular claims, we should set that up. And they're always willing to sort of have those discussions.
Thank you. Anybody else with a question at this time? Anybody online or on the phone?
Mayor, I have no one online at this time.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next slide, real quick. So the RMA has a total of 12 programs, including IRMA. So we just have another 3 hours and we'll be done.
At all?
2 of the programs are mandatory, the pooled liability program and the employee assistance program. All of the other programs are optional. The city participates in some of these you do not participate in. But we are going to do an overview of the other programs just so you have an understanding of what you are participating in. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tammy Vitale, who's our pooled workers compensation program manager, to discuss the work comp program.
So the RMA's workers' compensation pool is an optional program. There are 50 of the 53 members in the pool. We provide coverage. Next slide, please. Sorry. We provide coverage for benefits that are mandated by the labor code. And slide, please. Thank you. We provide first dollar coverage. It's on a per occurrence basis. So if you have more than one employee injured in an accident, you are responsible for 1 retention. And the city's retention in the pool is 50,000. So as Joe presented earlier, we pay the claims from $1 and then we charge the city back 5 years after the fiscal year is ended. The RMA retains the first $500,000 of coverage. And above that, the RMA participates in another pool. It's the local agency workers' compensation excess JPA, easier and quicker said as LOCS. And they provide coverage from 500,000 up to statutory. And what that means is there is no cap. So whatever benefits are provided per the labor code, we provide coverage under the pool. The RMA, it does have representation on the LOCS board, and 2 employees from the city of Reedley and Lathrop are present at the LOX board meetings. Slide, please. This is just a chart of the different coverages and really the layers of coverage. Each member is responsible for their own retained limit. There are 6 to choose from. Again, the City of Selma has a $50,000 retention. And then the primary pool, the RMA's primary pool, is from the members' retained limit up to 500,000. LOX then provides coverage from 500,000 up to 5 million. And through LOX participation in another JPA, the Public Risk Innovation Solutions and Management PRISM. PRISM provides coverage through group purchase from 5 million up to statutory. And again, that is for any benefit provided per the labor code. One of the things that we also provide is oversight of the workers' compensation claims. And we're really looking at just general oversight of your third-party administrator, which is AIMS, and I'll outline that shortly. But we are reviewing claims monthly, randomly reviewing claims, provide reports to the board at each meeting. And we're also providing reports to the executive committee with regards to workers' compensation coverage, as well as things that are happening in the legislature. So looking at claims, are we moving claims towards a resolution? How can we close a claim? How can we make sure our injured workers are getting the right benefits and moving forward as quickly as possible? And then we're looking at settlement. So when a total incurred amount, which is the paid and reserved for each claim, if a claim exceeds the member's retention, then that settlement authority rests with the RMA. And what I am looking at, again, are we moving it towards resolution? How can we close it if at all possible? Slide, please.
There's no per claim retention on workers' comp up to 50,000. Is that per claim?
Per
Per-
occurrence. So
per-
per occurrence. So if you have multiple employees injured in one incident, you're only responsible for the 50,000.
But if one employee has a specific injury and that specific injury results in medical costs and indemnity less lost payroll less than 50,000, the city eats that.
Yes, and it's again, through the retrospective adjustment process, we are evaluating what those costs are.
City turns everything in and that gets paid for later at
Correct.
the end of 5 years.
That's correct.
Okay.
The labor code states that the safety officers, police and fire, for your volunteers, they are automatically covered per the labor code. The city also has an option, or cities have an option, to provide coverage to non-safety volunteers. So the city has adopted a resolution providing coverage for your non-safety volunteers. 43 of our 50 members in the pool have adopted a resolution as well. And I will say that these claims, they're usually your volunteers want to get back to work. They're, really low cost claims. So it is really not of concern as far as any claims that we have for a volunteer.
You cover us?
Yes.
Council members?
Well, let me rephrase that. If you're provided a stipend in any way, you are considered an employee. So while you're working, doing something for the city, yes, you would be covered under workers' compensation.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Prior to the October of 2017 Las Vegas incident, if a safety officer, specifically, I should say a police officer, was outside of the state and they were injured, they were not covered. So, as you know, we had a lot of safety personnel at that incident. People were injured. Some of those claims are still being litigated because they were not covered at the time. So what happened is the labor code was changed to help that situation. If you have a police officer who's injured while out of state and they are providing a service to the public, they are covered if the city elects to adopt a resolution. And you can see here, 12 of our members have adopted that resolution. City of Selma has not. If you're interested, it is something that we can provide a template for you. There is no additional fee for this coverage. And I will say, since this been adopted in 2018, we have not had, the RMA has not seen a claim for an out-of-state police officer.
So a police officer goes to a convention in Vegas and there's a problem there and the police officer does what they do and they respond to save lives and they get hurt in the process. There's no workers' comp for them under the city policy,
At this point for this city, that's correct. Unless
if
you
we-
adopt the resolution.
unless we adopt resolution 3600.2.
It's whatever resolution number you would do it, but it's resolution per labor code.
I'm sorry,
3600.
per labor code.
Okay, yeah.
And then, does that cost the city extra?
No.
We should add that. Thank you for letting us know.
Margie, I'm happy to send you that resolution. Email that to you tomorrow.
Does it include fire?
No, the labor code and the law right now only pertains to police officers. Now, there is some activity by the fire unions, chiefs, groups that are trying to get the same labor code adjustment, but at this point in time, it is not in effect.
But
Okay? Yes.
yeah, on that, on that note, the fire department are now the risk factors out there. And, they're required to have, vests, bulletproof vests, because they go to the scene. When they're called to the scene, the police or fire are there. And sometimes, they're in a line of situations that they're trying to save lives, but they don't know what to expect when they go in situations themselves. So, wouldn't you think they should be covered? I mean, on that situation?
If they're in California, they would be covered.
No?
And again, because the labor code mandates what benefits are provided, if they're out of state, they are not covered.
Unless there's some agreement with that agency that they go to help, the fire department being one outside. If they say, help us, we'll cover you under workers' comp,
Yeah.
then they'd be covered that way. Is that correct, Chief? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so as a mutual aid response through the CFAA agreement, we would be covered as just part of the scope of our employment. And then just one question I have or comment, in our municipal code, there's a section that pertains to firefighters with a duty to act outside of the performance of their work. How does that, I guess, impact this discussion with regards to out of state? I'm unfamiliar with that, so.
Again, because the labor code states you have to be in California to be covered. If you are injured, not a problem. It's those out of state, and that our hands are tied with that regard as far as if you are injured out of state. Again, your mutual aid agreements will cover that and they'll be covered. But if you went to a facility or some type of event out of the state, you would not be covered according to the labor code if you were injured, even if you were assisting the public.
Even if there's a section in our municipal code that renders a duty to aid? Interesting, okay, thank you.
That is correct. And that's what happened when we had the October incident in 2017. And that's why there's lots of still lawsuits for both the fire and the police. They were out of state. They were doing what they're trained to do. And so our hands were tied in that regard. And I don't mean just our hands, but just the community's hands from the workers' compensation claim perspective. Okay, next slide, please. So again, RMA contracts with your third-party administrator, Acclimation Insurance Management Services, AIMS. All claims should be reported to AIMS, and I mean claims by illnesses or injuries. Anything that somebody indicates it's a work comp claim, then it should be reported to AIMS. The RMA does mandate in their memorandum of coverage that the claim is to be reported within 30 days. And if it's not, then it is not covered by the RMA. On the website, we do have many different resources, bulletins. We have postings that might assist each city. And one of them was what I would call a cheat sheet. If an injury occurs, here's what the steps should be to contact both AIMS, your city, and other parties that are involved in the workers' compensation claims.
What constitutes knowledge?
Great question. And I say that because if somebody tells their supervisor, that is knowledge of an injury. And so it's really, again, the duty for the supervisor to make sure and follow the city's process to report a claim. It doesn't mean my coworker, I sat here and went, oh, I hurt myself, right? It really is a supervisor and anybody in HR, any kind of a supervisory role.
Okay. And then what about, I have a pain. It could be carpal tunnel. It might not. Not going to do anything about it. 31st day. Yeah, it's getting worse. Going to go do something about it. As long as I haven't told my supervisor, it'd be covered under the RMA policy.
It may be covered under the RMA policy, and because workers' compensation are medically based, it's what the doctor says, yes, it's related to your employment. And so again, as far as the 30-day notice, it is to the RMA from the time you knew it was an injury, illness, or accident. So you're, again, if you didn't tell your supervisor, if you were an employee, didn't tell your supervisor, that 30-day clock is not starting. It's when you're notifying supervisor and above. When the city itself knew about the injury. The employee didn't tell you, then how can you report the claim to Ames? So. Slide, please. And then the last slide I have for you is one of the other services we provide are structured return to work services. Basically, we're tracking people returning to work. If they're on modified duty, we're trying to get them back to full duty as quickly as possible. One of the services here that are outlined, and there is another piece of this with our partner through nurse triage. So the employee follows the process the city's has in place for reporting a claim. And then they're also calling the nurse triage line at Allied Managed Care. It is a toll-free number. It is staffed by nurses. They are available 24/7, including holidays. And as soon as employee reports the claim, the city's designated staff is receiving notice of that claim. Ames, your third-party administrator, is, as well as the structure return to work coordinator. The sooner we get it, the sooner we can start investigating if necessary. Some of those are pretty clear cut. Somebody was injured, they need medical treatment, and off we go. This does not take the place of what the city has internally. So it is just an additional resources. If the employee is not able to call in, we recommend that the supervisor calls the injury in so we can start our process. That, unless there's questions.
One question.
Yes,
So,
Yeah.
there's an issue where there's, on a claim, an employee, claims that they were, treated harshly because just because they turned in a workers' comp claim. There's part of the labor code that refers to, would that be picked up under the employer's liability part, or would that be picked up under the IRMA part? Or would the city be covered at all for a quote 132A claim?
so under the workers' compensation pool, I will say that, the RMA will pay for defense of that claim, the cost to defend that claim. But the 132A, if they are found, the city is found liable, it is not covered by the RMA. And IRMA liability,
Yeah, Irma's retaliation is more retaliation for an employee. Employment.
Got it. Two separate coverage parts. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Then any loss control resources that the city could utilize to get the workers' comp premium down?
So Adam will cover that shortly and
Great.
be able to assist on that.
Keep-
And one thing I would like to add, if I may, you talked earlier about file reviews. Every open claim is reviewed by Ames every 90 days at minimum. And what I'm looking at is every claims on a monthly basis. So that we are definitely monitoring the claims and making sure they're moving towards resolution and being able to close those when we can.
I guess what I'm saying is I get the internal reviews, but can we start doing that with our city? Make it external and review it with our HR department, our city attorney, those who are department heads who could be affected and who could take steps to mitigate those claims in the future.
Arguing on that?
Thank you.
Yep.
Afternoon. I'm Melissa McDonald. I'm the litigation manager for the RMA. I've been the litigation manager for 13 years. Prior to that, I worked as defense counsel, doing defense work and litigation for another 13 years. So I've been doing this for quite a while. So what you have for liability is not optional, it's a mandatory. And like you said before, just to reiterate, it's everything from your pothole claims to your excessive force claims. So it really runs the gambit of types of things that we see. You guys currently have, I took a quick peek at it before I came here. You guys have about 17 open claims and the reserves on those claims are just a little bit over $1 million. So that means that's the total incurred. That could end up being, that's our best guess at this point. So it could end up being more than that. It could be less. Can you hit the next slide, please? So with the RMA, it starts covering $1, so you don't start getting bills right away. What you'll do is you'll send out your claim to Ames, and we kind of start going through the process. And if we hire an investigator, that's not something you pay for out of pocket. The RMA covers it, and then it's dealt with through the budgeting process down the road. RMA is the first $1 million of coverage. Then it goes up to Karma for the next 9 million. Our representatives for Karma are Kevin Warner from Ripon and Paul Lohr from Turlock. Next slide, please. And right now the coverage from Karma, so the first $10 million of any resolution, whatever the case may be, the first $10 million is 100% taxpayer money. So the first $1 million comes from RMA, 100% taxpayer money. The next 9 million comes from Karma, which is also taxpayer money. Can you hit the next slide? And then we purchase the Karma purchases reinsurance and excess after that. And what's interesting is this tower that you see now, it used to be a few years ago, it used to just be 2 or 3 little next steps. And now the insurance market is so hard. We've got all these different coverages. And like Rob had said, we've got $34.5 million up to $34.5 million right now. And that used to be 29, and it's where it is now. And even within these coverages, some will only take a couple of hits. They're not 100, like it's just a crazy market right now. And this is just for the 25-26 program year. So who knows what next year will be like, because every year we have to look for reinsurance and excess.
You guys get guarantee fund coverage as the consumer. You're the buyer
For
for these layers.
Yes, for this program year.
So if those carriers providing that would go out of business, they would get some backup from the state, from the guarantee fund.
So you have to look at.
Got it. And then, do you go by AM Best rating, Standard and Poor's when you're vetting them financially for how strong they are financially, since there's no safety net in case they go insolvent? Not too many out there. Water market.
And we went up to the 34.5 million after we had just one case that was really ugly. And it was like, are we going to try this case? Are we going to settle this case? And at the 29 million, everybody was really worried that if we don't resolve it then if you go over the 29 million, that leaves that city exposed to an excess judgment over this. So, and then there's a school of thought, they'll take whatever is your top layer. So it's always the
For the coverage line.
because that's what we get is if we have 29 million, we get a $29 million demand. If we've got the 34.5, we get the $34.5 million demand. But with the crazy, verdicts that we're seeing these days, we get what we could top out at for the most part. And so next slide, please. So as your litigation manager, I provide general oversight of the program. So Ames is your third-party administrator. So for your area here, you guys are considered the central. We have a northern, central, and southern region. And so you're considered the central region of the Central Valley. And Nick Jensen is currently your designated person. So when you guys get a claim, you file it with Nick, and Nick kind of works with you to try and say, how are we going to respond to this claim? So your claims are due to us as soon as you get a claim, you've got 10 days to submit it to Ames for a response, and you'll see why in a minute. But and so then what we do when we get a claim in, sometimes they're a little more serious and we need to report them to Karma right away. Sometimes with those claims, we look at it and think, do we want to pre-assign it, even though it's still at the claim stage, to defense counsel to try and get all the evidence secured and things like that, and even potentially try and resolve it before it turns into a lawsuit. Once any claim that is reserved at 50% of the SIR, I start watching it, and the city will get a letter that says litigation management's now watching it. Under the governing docs, once it's reserved at 70%, 75% of your SIR, and the city's SIR is also 50,000 for your general liability program. And once it's reserved at 75% of that, which is almost any case, it's going into litigation because the reserves are the total incurred, not what we've spent. And so you'll get a letter that says, now I'm taking control over your litigation, which only means that I mean, technically the buck stops with me. That doesn't mean I'm icing out the city or anything like that. I'm still trying to make sure we're all on the same page. We're trying to process things the way everybody's in agreement. At the end of the day, if something like there's some political reason why you don't want to settle things, and I think it should be settled, you have at that point, if we can't come to an agreement, you would have to appeal my decision to the executive committee. That has only happened one time in my 13 years, and it was mainly because they wanted to pay out on, it was a politically sensitive issue, and they wanted to pay a bunch of money and not use the defenses that were available. And I can't do that to the rest of the pool. So if you want to do pay out of pocket for a political reason, that's up to you, but I can't use pool funds to pay for somebody's political agenda.
The city tells you, no, we just want this claim paid. It's shaky legally, no foundation. It's not foundational. Just pay it. You're going to say, can't do that because this is a pool and has everybody's money in it.
Correct.
That's from general liability, probably to employment practices to IRMA.
So, and some of the things that go, and this would be what's going into your IRMA decision-making process too, is on whether to settle cases or not. So last year, from September of 2024 to the present, I took 5 cases, decided to take 5 cases to trial, and out of those 5 cases, we lost 1. So I do have a pretty good record of picking what we should go all in on, and but in all fairness, RMA has a very strict policy. If they think a defense should apply, they want to try those cases. That's kind of always been their philosophy. It's a little more dicey now with the nuclear verdicts like they are to try and make that call, and especially like you guys are part of Fresno County, which is my least favorite jurisdiction to be trying cases in the Central Valley. You've got way too many hospital personnel and school districts and things like that that end up being in your jury pool that make it really dicey. Yeah, you guys recently had a verdict where it was essentially a trucker. It wasn't a public entity case, but they look at us the same way. Like we talk to jurors after our trials and stuff. And even though they all promise that they're not going to look at us like a deep pocket, that they're going to treat us like an individual, and that they're not going to consider an insurance or anything like that. At the end of it, they're like, well, you're the city. You've got a deep pocket. You can afford it. It's like, what? What did you say? That's exactly what you said you wouldn't do. But it was still a deep pocket kind of case, and it was a truck driver that was backing into the docking area to unload an area, and he was really struggling. So some other truck driver came to try and help him figure out how to back into the docking area. And clearly, like he doesn't know what he's doing, or he wouldn't need your help. And somehow he gets himself in between the docking area and the truck, and he gets squished and killed. $58 million out of Fresno County for that case. So it is literally not my favorite county to be in. So some of those things go into consideration when you're thinking about, do I want to try this case in this county or not? And what's problematic for your county as well is, like, in addition to all of the teachers, is so far we've had not a lot of success with what's called a motion for summary judgment, which is basically you say, these are the facts that are not in dispute. So plaintiff puts in their paper evidence, we put in our paper evidence, and our position is based on all of this different evidence, you as a matter of law should be able to say defense wins. So and that there's no triable issue. A triable issue is like one witness says the light's green, one says it's red. That's always going to go in front of a jury. But if you've got a legal issue, the court should be able to make that determination. And we can't get courts to do their job. They're just like, we're going to deny it for whatever reason and let it go to a jury. And once you're in front of a jury, it's a crapshoot. You just don't. You've got 12 people and who knows what they're gonna do. If you're lucky enough in federal court, you're at least it's only 8 people and you need a unanimous verdict. So, so our police, but some of these better trial attorneys, for our civil rights stuff are taking the federal civil rights claims out of it and just trying it on like a Bain Act and, sticking with state law claims because it's 12 and they don't need a unanimous verdict. So, so some of that, we bring some of that to the table too, as far as, what is your DA doing here in Fresno County? Like they're hit and miss whether they're upholding our 148s or, when they don't, that means we don't have that heck bar immunity potentially. They're hit and miss whether they're even prosecuting cases. So that leaves us open to, search and seizure kind of, civil rights things. So and we deal with that too, like letting people know what's going on, the temperature of the area when we do the trainings as well. So let's see, did I miss anything? So we have a panel of defense counsel that we assign our cases to. There are ways, if you know anybody who wants to be on the panel, that we have ways that you can nominate them and they can go through the process to be added to the panel. If you have a city attorney who's also on the panel, they're not allowed to do your city work. We find that to be kind of a little bit of a conflict of interest. So to just keep it clean, we just don't allow, because a lot of our little cities have contract city attorneys. So they may qualify to do someone else's work, but they can't do their own. And then I do reports out all the time to our executive committee and our board regarding the claim activity. So, and as far as you guys go, I don't think I've had I'm not aware that you guys are doing quarterly is what most cities do for claims reviews. But you have to ask Ames, like call them up and say, we want to start doing, we try and meet with your schedules. So if you want to start doing that, start having quarterly reviews, just reach out to Ames. And in case you're having any issues with your adjuster or anything like that, and you want me to be present, I'm more than happy to be there. Or if you just even want that, extra contact, I'm happy to attend those as well. I'm doing one in Madera next week.
Would those, okay, so would those claim reviews be with different folks based on the different types of coverage that the city has? Like the general liability is, and the auto liability as opposed to the employment practices liability and the workers' comp, the employer's liability?
Correct.
So you could conceivably have,
Workers' comp, we usually do workers' comp because Ames is the same as your TPA for workers' comp as well. So like when I do the ones that I've done with Ceres, Madera, Merced, they usually do the general liability and the workers' comp at the same time.
definitely help
All right, so
just to get a handle on them. And then a quick question for you. What are some of the key, I don't know if I'm talking to the right person, exclusions in the general liability policy?
So you have a pollution exclusion is one of your big ones, especially in this area. You have one of the things that is, do we have that on the slide? I can't recall. We try not to get too in the weeds on this,
get it. Yeah.
but that's one of the big ones. We also have an exclusion for if you don't, this is for you, Chief. If you don't use, do you do any of your SROs? Do you have SROs here? If you don't use the language in we have executive committee approved language, the indemnity language that you have to use in your contracts to have coverage. So if you're not aware of that, I can send that to you. And the main reason for that was we had a school shooting where our officer wasn't even there and the school district was coming after us. So it's like, we're supposed to be strategic partners and it puts us more at risk by just being on your campus. And so that's why the language was developed there. There's also a medication exclusion, which that can come up with, like if you have maybe a senior program where they might be administering medication, or you have like a jail where you might be administering medication, there's a medication exclusion, but you just need to get an endorsement if that might apply to you.
No intentional loss exclusion or?
Well, the ones we see, there is some intentional exclusion, but for the most part, if you
I mean, you don't.
If you still
exclude
have
assault
vicarious
battery.
liability for the intentional conduct, it's not necessarily excluded. So right now, for example, I have a case where, what we're seeing more of is sexual harassment and, the SAM cases, sexual assault and molestation cases, with the police departments. And one thing that could be a concern about that as well is they are considering that to be one occurrence. So say you have an officer who's been working for you for 10 years, they're going to start at that first assault, alleged assault, and it's going to be looked at as a continuing misconduct. And so you might end up having 10 victims, and it's only considered one occurrence. You're not going to have 10 different occurrences. Does that make sense?
It does. So instead of having that 34.5 million bucks for each occurrence, you got 34.5 million for everything
Yeah.
that officer did.
And that might be back to your
To all the
29,
victims.
or I think 29 is the least we ever had. So 20, it might go back to 29. I think the one that we have right now went back to the 29, and it's got 7 victims and right now, who knows, right? Like with the statute of limitations essentially being non-existent, how long are people going to keep coming out of the woodwork for,
Another city has a real issue with that. And then the pollution exclusion, can you just talk briefly about that real quick? What's that about?
So anything, where we see it a lot of times is, so it's kind of a runoff. I mean, and a lot of times they're not seeking damages, they're seeking injunctive relief. So for general liability, at the end of the day, you need to also be seeking damages. So if you're just seeking injunctive relief, it's not covered. So if something that has a bunch of runoff, and it's really arising out of a, pollution is the damage. So it could be, they could call it, trespass to land or a nuisance claim. But if it's really all arising out of, some type of contaminant, that's going to be excluded. One time we had a police case where they launched a bunch of tear gas into the house, and that was the argument, is that the tear gas had contaminated a bunch of stuff in the house, and that was deemed excluded.
But there's no exclusion for, say, sick building syndrome, or people work in old city buildings that may have had asbestos or problems with those buildings. There's no
So
problem
that would
with
end up
that.
being in your workers' comp, because this is only third party so it's got to be third party liability. So you do have exclusions, like if your employee tries to sue you for a trip and fall, that's going to be excluded
Right.
because they don't want
Take
any kind of
benefits under
of,
workers' comp.
it's a third
Family could.
party. So that would fall back into if your sick building kind of things is going to fall back generally to workers' comp.
Members of the public still come into the public buildings though, so there could be some sort
Yeah,
of third
so there
party
could be,
exposure.
if they're saying, they got exposed to some lead-based paint or asbestos or something like that at your building, that would be excluded.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
And do we have to,
Land use only, like, so, not inverse is covered, but land use, so, like, say you have some kind of building ordinance thing that I don't know why I can't think of an example, because we had one not that long ago. But if it arises out of a land use decision, that's excluded. So I'm happy to send you, kind of something that summarizes what.
because
the
it's not really a
exclusions are.
policy, right? We haven't been told, there's no real policy for the RMA. It's more like it's a JPA with, what are the rules of it?
Memorandum of coverage.
So there is a memorandum of coverage then
Yeah.
that looks like a policy,
Yes,
reads like a policy.
yes.
We could see that eventually.
Yeah,
That'd be.
I
that'd be
can
good
get
to see.
you, I can send that to Margie and.
Does that change every year after the board meets and looks at policy language? How often does that change?
We haven't had huge substantive changes to it, but we're always open. We have what's called a memorandum of coverage subcommittee that meets annually, and that's where any changes are made. We certainly are open to if someone has some ideas, but I don't think I think the biggest substantive change was probably 5 years ago, and it was might have been a little more than 5 years ago now, was the Exhibit A and B, which are the SRO indemnity language. The rest of it is kind of, there haven't been huge substantive changes, which is not to say that people aren't open to it. It just, things sometimes come up where it's like, do we want to add that? Do we not want to add that? Because we'll come up with someone will say, hey, can we do this? What do you think? Is this covered or not covered? And then we're like, holy crap, what are they doing now?
We do solicit.
On a other note, how often does the board meet? Is it a quarterly or is it every 6 months? How's that?
The board meets in October, March, and June times a year. But then the executive committee meets those 3 times plus four other times, which that's kind of hit and miss on the 4 other times. It depends how much, a lot of times it gets canceled for lack of business. And I did check, can we go to the next slide? So the reason that they want 10 days for reporting claims is because of the Tort Claim Act. And that is one thing that Ames is great at. They've been the third-party administrator for the RMA for 30 years. So they are very familiar with the Tort Claim Act, where you might not get that same depth of knowledge from regular insurance. And so some of the, can we go to the next slide? Let's go to the next one as well. So one of the reasons is you've got 20 days for the notice of insufficiency to go out. And that's why between you getting it to Ames and Ames helping you with the response, it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to get that notice of insufficiency out. And basically what the tort claim is supposed to do is tell you, this is what we're suing you for. So you can go out and investigate it, potentially resolve it, fix the issue. It's kind of supposed to keep it from going into protracted litigation. It doesn't always happen. But it's the reason for the quick response on the insufficiencies. If you don't put it out there, you waive it. And that's the same thing is true as if it's untimely. If you don't put it out there in time, you waive that as well. So the quicker you can get it into Ames, the better. From what I've seen, you guys have a sidewalk ordinance, but it's not the best one I've ever seen. We just put out I think we did it in March, what we recommend as being a sidewalk resolution that is, or a sidewalk ordinance that we consider to be kind of the model sidewalk ordinance. And people, all cities, some of our cities, I think I did a little more than half have some type of liability shifting ordinance, which Selma's is a sidewalk shifting to some degree. It's requiring the property owner to keep it free from defects and debris and things like that, but it doesn't require the adjacent property owner to defend and indemnify you, which is perfect for us as a organization if everybody does that. And the pushback we always get is, well, that's why, they're like our customers. We can't be forcing them to use their insurance. It's our sidewalks. But one thing I can tell you, I have never seen like I see now. I've got at least 10 claims where they fell in their front yard. It's like those claims would not even be here if those cities had sidewalk ordinances. We wouldn't even be talking about it. They're not going to sue themselves, or it's a couple of like not even the next house over, and it's them. And it's like they wouldn't be suing their neighbor. Or it's the adjacent property is a business. And so on the ones that we've had, and the other thing that I'm seeing more and more is we're seeing catastrophic losses or alleged losses because it's people riding e-bikes and e-scooters and one wheels. And so they're not just little trip and falls where there's no real, I hurt my knee or I hurt my shoulder, which we just had a case that he hurt his shoulder and that was it. $200,000 in a future surgery, and in Stanislaus County got awarded nearly $1.5 million. So your trips and falls where you're just having, and that was an auto accident, to be fair, but it could have been the same alleged injury for a trip and fall. And so if they're willing to award that type of money, And all of our trip and falls that we're seeing right now, they're bigger injuries, they're head injuries. They're almost every one we see has a TBI now. We have one right now that we just got what's called a 998, which is a statutory offer to resolve the case for $3.4 million for a trip and fall. And that's what they think we can't beat at trial. So, and he's got a kidney injury that he says, I mean, when you listen to his injuries, I'm like, where did he fall from? His roof? I mean, he's got injuries that they're more consistent with a car accident than they are a trip and fall. But, you know, it's his word against nobody's because there were no witnesses. So I can't stress enough about sidewalk ordinance. And if you want me to come and do a presentation at one of your open, like in a regular meeting so that you can justify why sidewalk ordinances are are worth it and not a burden on the adjacent property owner, I'm happy to do that.
Real quick, sometimes we vote as a council to turn down claims so that they can go to the RMA. What are those types of claims?
Seated by a government's code claim. And so what they do is they serve on you a claim. You have 45 days to act on that claim. Yeah, or you can take that route if it's an insufficient claim and within 20 days, notify them their claim is insufficient and they have to resubmit it.
All claims?
All claims.
All claims?
All claims for
Irma claims?
damages, unless there are certain exceptions. There are exceptions, for example, for claims for unpaid wages by employees. That only relates to unpaid wages, not, you know, your sexual harassment or anything like that. There are a few other exceptions, but they're few and far between.
And anonymous
Almost
claims that come
every-
in, how did those get turned down if they're anonymous complaints? Anonymous claims that come in.
Theoretically, I don't think you could make an anonymous claim against a government entity or anybody else for that matter. In order for you to deal with somebody making a claim against you, you have to know who that person is. You have to know what that status of that person. There are some situations where you're dealing with minors, that they can act through their guardian parent. And you don't know the identity of the minor, but you definitely know the identity of the parent.
So anonymous claims really aren't claims for purposes of what we're talking about today. These councils have no opportunity to take a look and vote whether to approve or deny
Yeah,
them.
well, how would you,
I think
if, for example, it's a claim by an employee or, you know, making an employment related claim that only an employee can make, you necessarily have to know the identity of the person because you have to know that that person is an employee. And there's a broad definition of employee. It includes applicants for employment, for example. It includes former employees. So you have to know that person has a particular status before you can know that person can even advance that claim.
So for these guys to look at it, the council has to deny the claim for
Yeah,
it to
I
go.
think for
through.
clarification, they're talking about an IRMA claim. The IRMA claims do not typically come in front of council. No,
They're not
they're
tort
they're
claims.
totally different. They're not
They're
tort
not tort
claims.
Employment claims are not, tort claims are basically things that are general liability claims. Contract claims are excluded. Your 1983, like federal claims are excluded, even though they get submitted a lot of times in conjunction with your state law claims. But they're basically your general liability.
Didn't we talk about this earlier? If the council voted to approve the claim, the tort claim that came in, who pays it? You guys pay it, or
So you
does the
would be-
city, the general fund pay it?
Well, that depends on if you submitted it to the RMA or not.
If it gets denied, it necessarily goes to the RMA.
No.
Before you act on it, it should go to the RMA.
It should go to the RMA immediately, so you don't jeopardize coverage. If you get a tort claim, it should immediately go to the RMA. And if it doesn't go within the 10 days of receiving it, you jeopardize your coverage.
Then it-
So,
Then it comes back to the city council to vote whether to
Well,
approve
you
or deny,
send it to
even
the,
after it goes to the
you
RMA.
you give it to the RMA immediately. And the RMA, I suspect, tell me if I'm wrong, will tell you either deny this claim or accept this claim, send them a notice of insufficiency, that sort of thing, correct?
correct. They'll work with you on that. And you have the option too of, if you adopt a resolution that gives your city clerk or somebody else, it could be the city manager, the option of resolving claims within a certain amount. So they could reject them without them needing to come to city council necessarily, or they could, I mean, technically, even though you could use up to your $25,000 or your $50,000 SIR, but really you're supposed to, like, once you're spending more than 75% of your SIR, it should be in conjunction with the litigation manager. And
Opening the door, if the city says, yeah, we'll pay for this, we'll go ahead and pay for it. You know, the RMA is not recommending to settle it, then doesn't that open the door for a potentially larger claim in the future that refers to that claim, if it's that type of claim that could lead to something bigger and worse?
well, that's
And
what
would
you,
RMA, would they pay that, or would they just say, you paid it, so it's on you?
well, if you're like, you mean you acting unilaterally without collaboration with the Ames and the RMA?
Well, I'm saying if the city, you know, approves it and says, we're gonna pay it, and you say, no, we're not gonna, don't send it
If
to
you
us.
if you act unilaterally, you don't notify the RMA,
No, if you notify
You-
the RMA and you get a recommendation not to pay,
and you pay it anyway,
you pay it anyway.
you're probably gonna pay that, and you're
And
gonna
if it
be,
leads to something bigger, the city's probably gonna pay that one too.
well, technically it can't lead to something bigger. It might lead to kind of a precedent setting thing, if you get a bunch of claims
Certain
with
type.
people that get tire damage because of your pothole filled roads, and you just, adopt a policy of paying these things out because they're small dollar amounts and you don't want to have to deal with them, you're going to probably end up getting a lot of those in the future. And so it's just something to think about as to how you want to deal with those kinds of things.
Next page, please. Can pass through all of this. So the transfer of risk is actually done by a separate department. Your contact right now is Tracy Berry. And what she'll do is she'll go through any contracts you guys want to go through. Essentially, if you don't properly transfer the risk, there is in addition to a handbook on how to do your claims, there's also a guide to contractual risk transfer. They're both on the RMA's website. And she'll go through, sometimes she'll just do an audit with people on their contracts to say, are you transferring the risk correctly? Are you making sure your people have the correct insurance? So where this comes up a lot is maybe you're contracting some road work. So you want to make sure whoever gets that bid to do your road work is also accepting all of the risk of, if they don't put out the right signage and someone falls into a ditch or something, that's going to cover you. Sometimes it's as simple as we have a case right now where essentially they had a farmer's market going, and luckily they transferred the risk correctly and because somebody went through the barriers and hit a pedestrian. So luckily they had transferred the risk correctly and had $5 million of insurance from the people hosting the event. So it makes it so we're not putting the risk of, things that we could be getting someone else to insure the risk. We want to put that on those other people. So it does double your self-insured retained limit if you don't correctly transfer that risk. Next. So there's also for special events coverage, Hub has a website that that provides coverage that's actually pretty reasonable. So like if it's the farmer's market plus they're serving alcohol and have a, mechanical bull there, like it's better to go through Hub and try and, get them to insure the event holder with something like that. So it's actually a little more reasonable, at least it used to be.
Is that actually available anymore? Because the city used to offer that as an option to folks having special events, because the city does transfer the risk and require paper from the event holders in order to stage those events as part of the application process. However, from what I understand, Hub hasn't been providing special event policies.
I have not heard that, so I'll look into it and
Could
let
you?
you know. Sure.
Yeah, because it was a very low cost alternative, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get those certificates of insurance from folks who are doing one-off events. Be helpful. Great, Philadelphia is kind of one of the leading providers too, if you guys are looking for companies.
I think that might be the end of me. All right. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you have any questions?
Okay, so Chrissy had mentioned earlier that we have multiple programs and the work comp and liability are obviously the two largest. So we went through those in detail. I'm just going to summarize the other ones. I want to leave plenty of time for Adam to go over the risk control services. But another program is the pooled property program. The City of Selma does participate. It covers repair and replacement costs for your real property and personal property. The city has $57 million of property in this program. It offers cities can attach directly to 100,000 deductible, or they can participate in a pool and lower their deductible. And Selma does participate in the pool with a $5,000 deductible. The limits on that are $1 billion. That is not a typo. Those are the limits. It's a very big program, so they've got some large members in there that need those higher limits. Obviously, the RMA does not need those, but it's very broad. It covers things. It also has includes some limited pollution and cyber coverage. It covers boiler machinery, also known as equipment breakdown coverage. So there's a lot of things included in there.
Cyber's included in that, cyber liability?
Yeah, there's some cyber liability. And then there's also cyber limits that are available, excess. I think Selma got a quote, but chose not to purchase those. I don't know, do you know off the top of your head the cyber? I'm sorry, I know I should have had that. I don't remember exactly.
Cyber's one of those weird property and liability to person, third party type of coverage, so probably be worth looking at to make sure that the city's got limits on that. And the city participates in that? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that program is through the Alliant Property Insurance Program, also known as APIP. And then the pooled auto physical damage is also through APIP. It covers repair and replacement cost coverage for scheduled vehicles with replacement values above 25,000. The police vehicles are fully self-insured through the RMA, but it's also repair and replacement cost. And again, the city has a $5,000 deductible on that. Currently, you have 99 vehicles in there valued over just $11 million.
CV.
The low value vehicle coverage program is a fully self-funded program. It covers repair or actual cash value of vehicles that are valued below 25,000. There's not too many vehicles anymore that are below that, but your older fleets are included in this. The city currently has 18 vehicles in that program at 325,000 values. And there's $500 deductible. The business travel accident is a life and accidental death and dismemberment coverage for business-related travel. Your entire council is listed and scheduled for this coverage in addition to some of the city employees. There are currently 12 Selma employees covered. It's a $100,000 benefit on that. The employee assistance program is It's a mandatory program. You can ask for an exemption to that if you have a program through your health insurance or otherwise that is as lucrative as the one that we offer. This provides online services, a wellness suite, legal consultation, other services, and then in addition to 6 counseling sessions per year, and it's 3 per every 6 months. Some of the programs you don't participate in are crime, which covers the loss of money and securities for either dishonest acts or an employee's lack of performing their job prescribed by law. And then the difference in conditions, which is earthquake and flood coverage and deadly weapons response. That's coverage for an event that might happen on a scheduled property through the APIP program. It doesn't include vehicles. So, you know, if there's been a lot of claims lately where vehicles are driving into parades or things like that. So that's coverage you don't participate in. And if the city's interested in quotes for any of these, we can give you a quote at no obligation. We do have a couple of additional services. I did mention the Cortico earlier that we pay for or the RMA pays as part of your premium for the manuals and the daily training bulletins. We do pay for half the cost of a fire manual through Lexipol for the development of that. The RMA doesn't currently pay for the ongoing costs of that. And then we try to enter contracts, group contracts that help save our members money. So we have a couple of those. Lexipol also offers a service called Cortico Wellness App. And it's an app for your first responders, actually for the entire police department. It covers dispatch and everyone to be able to call in anonymously for counseling type services. So that's available. The city does pay the cost of that, but we get a discounted service on it. And the other one is Resolute Guard, which is a cybersecurity service where they assess your computer equipment and stuff to make sure that there's no breaches that can happen. Again, the city pays the cost of that, but it is at a discounted rate if you're interested in that. And unless there's any questions, I am going to turn it over to Adam.
Just real quick, I know we're getting close to 5. No earthquake and flood. City does not have earthquake and flood coverage on its buildings, correct?
No, not through us.
And then, okay, and then on the replacement cost is ordinance or law, is building code upgrade included in the definition of replacement costs? Like if, you know, we got a building that's 30 years old and it burns and you got to rebuild it to code, to city code, would those additional costs to bring it to city code, would that be covered? Like say that you had to sprinkler the building? Would
That
that
is
be covered?
The one thing that isn't covered, there's an option for green coverage if you want to bring your buildings up to code for, it's called green coverage. If you want to build with certain types of materials and stuff, that is not included. But the code coverage is included, my understanding, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Adam, we'll turn it over to you.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Staff. As mentioned, my name is Adam Lopez. I am the Loss Control Risk Consultant, and I have great news. I'm the last presenter. So, yeah. I will try to give an overview and highlight some of the support and services we provide, and hopefully, Mayor, answer your question you had earlier about the loss control support. So we can go to the next slide, please. The first one I'll talk about is regional safety trainings. This is a 12 calendar, month to month, July to June, where we schedule trainings ahead of time, 3 consecutive days, 3 different cities, and we communicate this with ample time to all our RMA members. And some of these training topics, I mean, they're like last month I was doing root cause analysis and how to do root cause investigation. And I had, you know, HR directors, department heads there, safety directors. And it's just open to all our members who want to send their staff to just learn and get trained and educated. But this week we have the CPR first aid, for example, in 3 different cities as well. And these are, again, 12-month calendars scheduled ahead of time. And it's open to anybody. But in addition to that, the auto fleet assessments is something that it's an ongoing evaluations of auto fleet assessments for all the city members, our main members, sorry. And the cities want to look into their fleets, their ambulance, their police, their truck, maintenance personnel, public works, and we just go out there and do a deep dive into auto fleet assessments. And what does that do to us? Well, it highlights any gap analysis. Where can we go in there and improve? What's causing the incidents? You know, is it distracted driving? And it's just an assessment that helps bring to surface the areas that we have to improve as a city. But going back to the regional safety trainings really quick, this is something that I highly recommend that all our RMA members take advantage, because we have trainings topics such as crosswalk safety, sidewalk liability, again, bloodborne pathogen. We have AI table talks, root cause analysis. I can go on, and it's very high value trainings that anybody can go and get equipped and really get trained and become an expert in those matter topics. So it's great. Next slide, please. We have the safety rating programs and policy reviews, which is, I'm going to go here and try to answer your question maybe you had earlier. This is where we partner up with your safety representative, and we look into all the deficiencies as far as, can we do program reviews? Do you have your active IAPP? How about your safety manual? Have your training programs? Do you have your business continuity plan? Anything that has to do with the safety manuals, compliance, we go there and I do a deep dive into even writing programs, help you develop your programs, such as reasonable suspicion, workplace violence, AI policies. And this is where we partner up with whoever's a safety representative. Many times it's HR director, many times it's multiple people. Nonetheless, this is why we're partner up with your representative for your city and really come by their side and see where we can lend a hand.
That's
and
no
support.
additional cost, right?
I'm sorry?
No additional
No.
cost?
This is a part of the relationship of the service. Next slide, please. In addition to the regional trainings that are scheduled on a 12-month basis, we have the targeted and customized safety training. And I will let you know that this is something where the safety representative for the city will reach out to me directly and be like, hey, Adam, I need training on this. Adam, do you have training on that? I need English training. I need Spanish training. I need trainings for, the first crew, the second crew, the third crew, 5 p.m. It doesn't matter. That's the type of support that we provide. I've been working with the city where we did workplace violence prevention for all the city staff, City of Patterson, as a matter of fact. 3 days of training, 9 different sessions to encompass all the city staff. I did bloodborne pathogen for another RMA member. We did reasonable suspicion for another city as well. We're working with the city right now doing defensive driving techniques and distracted driving for the police officers, the ambulance, EMS as well. There's just all those needs across the board, and this is where we come in and we do. I personally like to do in-person training, to be honest with you, but virtual is an option. I like to be in the room because the engagement and the attention level you can control more when you're in person. And some of these trainings are more effective when you're in person. But just to give you an idea there of the customized training, targeted training we have for some of the members, even spill cleanup diesel trucks for maintenance or public work. So again, I can go into detail, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Next slide, please. We recently, literally recently, maybe in the last 60 days, we introduced a new training platform to all of our ME members. It's called the Guide by Zyway, and this completely takes over the old platform we had. And this here is more robust. It's going to take too much of our time if I explain it in detail. However, I just want to say this. It's a very new, robust, efficient learning management system that all of our members can take advantage of. This is going to have training videos of multiple languages, handouts, training material, training content, and it's something that can be accessed from all our RMA members. Again, no additional cost. A great tool. In addition to being a platform where somebody can go in there and not only get you training on safety, but all other areas as well. Next slide, please. And I will leave off with this to answer your question, Mayor. One of the things that's going to be very important is when I say we partner up with your safety representative, it's literally partnering up and having a collaboration and partnership to do a deep dive. My experience, 20 plus years working with brokers, with carriers, working with companies like the Cheesecake Factory, it's doing a deep dive and really understanding where your losses are coming from. And it's not where you just shoot to see if you hit the target. No, we identify where your losses are coming. It's loss trend analysis. And we identify the top 3 losses and we hit that. We start, is it training? Is it supervisory? Is it management? Is it operational? Is it equipment? Right. So then we start tackling your claims, your XMOD, bringing those down. And that's how we partner up. And it's just to have a good understanding. We call it a gap analysis as well, doing a full evaluation of where the losses are coming from. So that's in a nutshell. I wanted to be very brief of the loss control. Much more than that, but this is the highlight of the main services that we provide.
Great. And then, did I miss it, or do you guys have driver instructional training as
We do.
well?
We do, and that's actually an area that we really highlight. It's not only on the LMS platform, it's not only through Karma, through Safety National, it's also doing it in person where we do hands-on. This is what I'm going to be doing for one of the members in the next month or so, where it's defensive driving, distracted driving. They've identified, not to mention the name, but they identified those who actually got in accidents. They're going to have in one room to have a deeper dive training, and to those who are just going to have general awareness, right? Because you never know. Sometimes you have frequent flyers that have multiple accidents. So you really want to put them in a room to really target, right, and drive home the defensive driving, distracted driving. So that's one of the areas that we really excel in is the defensive driving part, because we know there's multiple parts. It's not just police or EMS. You have public works driving the trucks, maintenance workers driving trucks, repairing, sidewalks, etc. So that's a area that we really excel in.
And not, we're getting close, but, so in auto, looking at, how important driver instruction is and the quality of drivers, when the city gets new drivers, do we send them to, does the city send them to the RMA to run their MVRs? Is the city on the, say, the pull notice, a program with the CHP where the city gets informed of losses or activity on driver records?
Yes, anybody that's required to be a driver for us is on our pull notice. And then anybody that has a class B or higher is required to be on the CHP notice. And so they actually get chosen for alcohol or drug testing program. So yeah, for the random pull.
Because that's definitely just a huge exposure there in terms of driver. And I know that it changes all the time, so it's easy to miss. So there's a controls program in place with the city to make sure that those drivers are kept.
Yeah, so when
kept
I do
current.
the employee orientation, they fill out the paperwork, I identify if they're going to be a driver for us or not. They fill out that paperwork. I then enter them into the system. So I have access to the DMV system, and I enter them in. It automatically does a pull on their license, and then that sends me any updates.
And then, in terms of the auto coverage, does the city have something the industry would call non-owned and hired? So is there liability coverage on the auto? I don't know who would know this. If someone is driving on behalf of the city, maybe after hours, they're doing something for the city, like going to a dinner for a nonprofit or something, and they're driving their own vehicle, but it's clearly on behalf of the city. Is that something that would potentially be covered and is not just out and out excluded in the auto policy? Take-home vehicles. Wow, we were doing so well.
Right.
And do we provide a driver list to the RMA? Do you guys require a driver list like some carriers, or that's just something you leave up to the city's due diligence? Okay, and if they get a DUI and their driver license, just, it happens, I have to ask, if their license is suspended and they're not a licensed driver and they still come in and drive a city vehicle, is the city still covered for their operation of that vehicle?
In the employees orientation, I talked to them about DUIs because you're right, they do happen. And they are required to immediately report that. I tell them in the orientation, don't make it be a pull notice for me. You better be in our office letting us know. because there's an automatic suspension of the license, so they cannot drive any of our vehicles. There are some courts that for some, they will give them work-only privileges, but we have to deal with the department and see what the actual, what the, the circumstances surrounding the event were.
See, what I'm getting to is an unlicensed driver covered. If it was beyond the city, I mean, the city's doing all the right things. It takes a while for the pull notice to get that report that there was a DUI and the license been pulled. Would the city still retain coverage, even if that particular employee wouldn't have coverage? Yes, it is. Unlicensed drivers. Drivers are covered. Another line. Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I
that.
have last two things. One, actually, the sidewalk reimbursement. We do have a program through the RMA, the sidewalk reimbursement, where we reimburse the cities $1,000 if they submit proper, um, I guess, like receipts or explanation, or there's a form we need to fill out. And it's something that we track every year, and I check the records, and unfortunately, I was asked, and I don't think the city, Selma submitted that, but it's $1,000, and we want to help you as well.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Mayor, we do utilize that $1,000 the 2 years that I've been here. And we've actually used that to purchase equipment to help eliminate the trip fall hazards on the
Yeah.
sidewalks.
Great.
Yeah, that's what it's used for. Good job.
And
And
we're
the last thing is this,
still-
Mayor, when you say risk management or risk control, it's not just me. We have an entire team that's behind me with experts and years of experience. So there's an area where you need help where I really can't support. We have my colleagues and peers as a full department that helps us out through the entire nation. So I just want to leave it with that.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
I have a question for you. Well, for anybody, it's a general question. Is the city of Selma represented on your boards? Because I noticed that every time you have something, oh, so-and-so is representing you, and I didn't see anybody from Selma. Are we not represented, or is there a reason why we don't want to put in, or how does that work?
We did not put all the board members on here for the RMA. The board members we pointed out here were the RMA representatives that represent, or the representatives that represent the RMA on other boards, our excess pools. But the city is represented, and every city has a board member and an alternate board member on the board. And I should have looked that up before I came, but currently it's Maggie. And is the alternate's vacant? Okay. So that's right, because, yeah, Janie was, so yeah, your primary's vacant right now, but your alternate can vote in the absence of your primary. So you are represented. Every city is required to be represented. The board is made up of a representative from each city.
And
No.
are they employees of the city, or are they council members of the city? Are they both? Are they volunteers?
Employees. Yeah, I don't know that we have any council members on the board.
I think you typically see it's usually the HR director and the finance director are the two.
Or the
main
city
ones.
manager.
Or the city
Yeah.
manager, yeah. You're always looking for, because there's so much, money involved with all the insurances, budgets, et cetera, so.
Yeah,
Maggie
needs to be-
works hand in hand.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to, it needs to be someone that has the authority to vote on behalf of the city at the board meeting, so. I just want to wrap up. I know we're almost out of time. I hope that our presentation today helped you better understand the RMA. It's your organization, and we want you to, understand everything you can about it. I hope we also represented that we're very passionate about what we do, and we really care about our members. I think Margie and Maggie can both vouch for that because they've been involved with this for many years, and probably Mr. Kunkel too, because he's been at many cities throughout the RMA that we've represented. So we're happy to wrap up with any additional questions. I really, really can't express enough how much we appreciate your interest and participation in this presentation, because there's nothing worse for us to get up here and have us glazed over city council as we're telling them things. You guys were just so participatory. We're just so grateful for that. So any additional questions?
Did we get a spreadsheet with, is it gonna be in the presentation that we saw, the breakdown of the premium per line item that the city pays, including IRMA, for RMA and for IRMA?
Yes, we can.
Did I see that earlier and and we were going pretty fast through the slides?
That's actually in our adopted budget, and I can email that to you.
Okay. You email that to all the council members? Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll get back to you on the claim file reviews for both work comp liability and IRMA. And then there's a couple other things I wrote down that will.
It's like we heard from the loss control gentleman, it's really important to do that trend analysis, that gap analysis, and to see where those claims are coming from. And we just don't know if we don't have those claims reviews.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out, taking us seriously. I know we're only 2% of your membership, but you know, to our city, you know, we take this really seriously, helping our city, and this is a huge part of our general fund and keeping our city safe.
We understand that. So any questions we can answer, we're available at any time.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Gonna move on to closed session from here. City Attorney?
We are.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and go into to closed session.
Just wanted to say.
Hi.
Yeah, if we want to get some sort of call together to talk about some of these.
Yes.
Instead of having the letters go back and forth.
That would
we
be,
could do
that would be preferable.
Okay, let's do that.
And, I actually have a claim.
Just waiting for it. Different?
But I think it might be a hybrid, RMA and you.
Oh.
Former city manager.
Okay. What's the general?
He's alleging everything under the
We're back in session. And we're going to go into. We all set? Okay, we're back in open session, and now we're going to go convene to closed session. The following items have been set aside for city council. To meet in closed session, the city attorney will provide an oral report regarding the closed session. The item to be considered tonight is public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 and Government Code 54957.6, salary of unrepresented employee, title, interim administrative services director. And with that, we are going to recess into closed session. Thank you.